Chapter 370. Han Fei was rather speechless. I've spent nearly 20 million points of spiritual energy, and I'm going to work hard to deduce the perfect fish transformation technique so that I can transform into a fish or a human at any time. In the end, you're telling me that you can't deduce it anymore? Then, wouldn't my nearly 20 million points of spiritual energy be wasted? Han Fei couldn't have looked more awful. He could only study the demon-level, low-quality fish avatar technique with a gloomy face. 2 days later, Han Fei finally finished reading all the contents of the book. Now that he had the cultivation method, it was indeed very profound. However, this was not the key point. Han Fei always felt that such a cultivation method was not perfect enough, because it still couldn't completely turn people into a fixed type of fish, but instead formed a new species. It was nothing compared to the Monkey King's 72 transformations, let alone turning people into crabs or octopuses. Moreover, once after cultivating, the result was irreversible. It meant that one would become a fish for all eternity. Of course Han Fei wouldn't. Things like cultivation. From the beginning, he only wanted to make it convenient for him to search for treasures and explore the sea. In the end, before they even found the treasure, the initial investment had already exceeded their expectations. In the book, except for XIU in addition to cultivation methods, it also talked about a peerless genius who incited countless people to cultivate together. He practiced the fish transformation technique. As a result, they formed a sect called the Church of God. Many ordinary fishermen and fishing masters were greatly encouraged. They felt that human beings were the real masters of the ocean and called for everyone to return to the ocean and their homeland. Then, the matter about the fish avatar technique really exploded. Rumor had it that countless experts had attacked in an attempt to kill the sea demons. But among the sea demons, there seemed to be a small number of experts who had fled. From then on, all the cities issued an order that anyone who mentioned the fish avatar technique would be killed. Those who practiced the fish avatar technique would be punished. As time passed, this story seemed to have fallen silent, and no one mentioned it again. But now, Han Fei learned such amazing information from a dilapidated mortal-level fish avatar technique. He could only suppress it in his heart. At this moment, he finally knew why Old Bai warned him that the fish avatar technique was forbidden. But Han Fei's heart was itching. There must be a follow-up. In the end, he only had a rough understanding of the early stages, and it was cut off. Wasn't he just whetting his appetite? However, now that things had come to this point, Han Fei could only put aside the fish transformation technique. Han Fei was not in a hurry to go out. He couldn't learn the fish avatar technique that he had been longing for, but he could refine a fishing boat. He had planned to dig a regular big red trunk from the center of the seaborne prairie according to Lord Seven's method on the dragon boat. Then, he would look for some auxiliary items such as fish crystal. But now, he had a ready-made 10,000-year-old big red trunk, which was comparable to a spiritual artifact. What other materials did he need to find? Besides, Han Fei had collected a lot of sea-swallowing seashells with all kinds of weapons inside. At the very least, they were high-grade magic treasures. There were dozens of inferior-grade spirit weapons and piles of various ores. Although those things couldn't be the main components of the boat, they were more than enough to serve as surface decorations, such as windbreaks, lower decks, hanging stone buckles, and some color-matching, streamlines, and unloading devices. Han Fei licked his lips and raised the small calabash in his hand. Although I have spiritual energy now, there's still a long way to go. It won't take much spiritual energy to refine a boat, right? Well, it definitely won't take much. When the demon purification pot sucked in a large section of the 50-meter-long big red trunk, Han Fei immediately took a breath. Sure enough, it could be refined. Han Fei was overjoyed. He was afraid that he couldn't refine something as big as a fishing boat and had to carve it by hand. But to his surprise, the demon purification pot seemed to be able to refine it as long as there was spiritual energy. Then, Han Fei threw in a large number of weapons, stones and 4 floating stones. Han Fei closed his eyes and waved his hands in the air. Hey! I don't want anything. The cabin is designed to be semi-open and streamlined. Fish cabin. I want a small fish cabin. As for the fence, forget it. I'll design it as a whole. In his mind, Han Fei simulated a cool, small yacht. However, unlike a normal yacht, Han Fei's fishing boat was designed to be fast. The yacht was streamlined. Even the theoretical sunbathing deck on the front side was removed, leaving only a fish cabin at the back of the cabin, and the part of the fish cabin cover was designed as the rear deck of the boat. The whole fishing boat was designed in the shape of an awl for Han Fei. It looked like a supercar, because Han Fei also designed 2 headlight-like streamlines on the bow of the boat. Next to these 2 fake lights, refine, with a thought from Han Fei, a large amount of spiritual energy swarmed out of the pile of spiritual stones and rushed directly to the demon purification pot. Hey, hey, hey! Don't absorb too much, don't absorb too much. Don't use too much. Seeing that the demon purification pot began to absorb spiritual energy directly from the pile of spiritual stones, Han Fei was displeased. He changed the terrain and moved the ultra-quality spiritual stones, high-quality spiritual stones, and mid-quality spiritual stones hundreds of meters away, leaving only the low-quality spiritual stones. However, the low-quality spiritual stones contained very little spiritual energy. Each one only contained more than 10,000 points of spiritual energy. Gotcha! 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 Han Fei's eyes widened. Almost every minute, 5 or 6 low-quality spiritual stones shattered into powder. Every time the cracking sound rang, Han Fei's eyelids twitched. This rhythm lasted for a full hour, and the speed of the low-quality spiritual stones shattering slowed down. Even so, 2 or 3 pieces would shatter in a minute. Han Fei's tears almost fell. Hey, 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 that's enough. This is the 900th piece. That's more than 9 million points of spiritual energy. However, Han Fei could only worry. The low-quality spiritual stones were still shattering. When 106 pieces were shattered, Han Fei's heart began to hurt, and the refining was finally over. Suddenly, a red and white fishing boat with a length of 1 meter appeared in his sight. Just a glance at it made Han Fei drool. Who wouldn't love a yacht when they were on the sea? Besides, this yacht was designed by Han Fei himself. Every arc was shining brilliantly, and every line was the result of Han Fei's painstaking efforts. In his eyes, information emerged. Name none introduction. It's made of 10,000-year-old big red trunk, blue sea wandering dragon bone, floating stone, red blood silver, white space stone. It's extremely fast and can travel 60,000 kilometers a day. The hull can withstand the damage of mid-quality spiritual weapons. Due to limited materials, it needs to be attached to a soul before it can speed up again. Quality mid-quality spiritual weapon, attached soul, non-recastable, unrefined. Note. Due to limited forging materials, it can be cast into a mid-quality spiritual weapon at most. Han Fei's mouth twitched. What? My fishing boat is a spiritual weapon level. It cost me more than 10 million points of spiritual energy, and you only gave me 60,000 kilometers a day? Smack. Han Fei slapped the fishing boat and frowned. Is there something wrong with the design? The rumored ghost speed divine boat can travel 50,000 kilometers a day. This is made of ultra-quality materials, okay? The more Han Fei thought about it, the angrier he became. He immediately refined a small carving knife and prepared to carve arrays on the boat. According to the records of the spirit-gathering scripture, the speed arrays were divided into water array, wind array, tide array, and as many as 12 kinds of arrays. It was a technique that used the power of nature to increase the speed, which was not difficult. But even if the difficulty was not high, it was still a very troublesome task to link up the formation and cover the entire ship. Han Fei picked up the carving knife and turned it around several times. Every time he wanted to start, he didn't know where to start. If he wanted to carve a spirit-gathering array, it was impossible. However, this speed array was different. One array might cause changes in the wind speed and airflow, but when two arrays were superimposed, the airflow might change. Once the changes were made, they might end up like a dog instead of a tiger, and the ship's speed would be reduced for nothing. Forget it, 60,000 kilometers it is. I'll carve it slowly in the future. After that, Han Fei patted the fishing boat heavily. Wind God boat, I will definitely make you a real wind God boat. By then, it will be the fastest fishing boat in the Level 3 fishery. It will be the fastest fishing boat in the Level 3 fishery. Giving up the idea of carving arrays, Han Fei popped out of Forge the Universe with a swish. When he came to the spirit-gathering array, the hexagon starfish was surrounded by tens of thousands of starfish. Among them, there were even a few exotic starfish. The moment they saw Han Fei, a large number of starfish began to flee. The hexagon starfish opened its eyes and quickly put away all the shiny gold and silver gems around it. Han Fei was amused. Master Hexagon Starfish, do you think I want your junk? The hexagon starfish was surprised. Have you finished your cultivation? Well, I'm out of seclusion. Okay, stop it. The spiritual energy in your body is overflowing. Let's go. It's time to go out. The Level 3 fishery was really too big. 2 months of the year had passed since the Seaborne Prairie was completed, including the delay in the beginning. Han Fei didn't know how Xia Xiaochan and the others were doing now. At this moment, Han Fei's strength had returned to its peak and he urgently needed to go out to find an uninhabited sea area to deduce the true spirit fishing art. However, the hexagon starfish rolled its eyes. Can you wait a few days for me? Han Fei was speechless. What? Haven't you absorbed enough spiritual energy? Leave some for the other starfish. Besides, the news that the big red trunk is gone will spread sooner or later. At that time, there will be a lot of people here. If you wait another 2 days, you'll be captured and made into a contractual spiritual beast. The hexagon starfish's eyes gurgled. I'm going to make a breakthrough. It's only a few days away. Han Fei was shocked. You made a breakthrough again? It took you more than 300 years to reach level 40, but how many times have you made breakthroughs in the past 2 years? The hexagon starfish scoffed. That's different. The spiritual energy in your home is thin, and I also ate the red fruit, but I can only eat one, unlike your spiritual beast, which can eat several. Shoot, reminded by the hexagon starfish, Han Fei almost forgot about Little Black and Little White. During this period of time, he had been studying the fish avatar technique and remembered that he hadn't summoned Little Black and Little White yet. Immediately, Han Fei thought of something, and with a flash between his eyebrows, 2 shadows, one black and one white, appeared. Huh! Different from their previous appearances, this time, Little Black and Little White directly drew 2 black and white rays in the water, circled a half arc in the water, and then landed next to Han Fei. Huh! Han Fei exclaimed again. He found that Little Black and Little White had changed. Not only had their bodies changed, but their temperament had also changed. First of all, the 2 little guys were more crystal clear at this time, and 2 long whiskers grew near their mouth. These long whiskers were almost as long as their body length. In addition to the long whiskers, Little White's body was emitting a holy halo all the time. It was as if its body was covered with a faint milky white brilliance. At first glance, it was full of spiritual energy. But Little Black was different from Little White. Little Black looked more ferocious, especially his eyes. Before, although Little Black was black, the sclera of his eyes were still white. Moreover, his eyeballs were also round. But at this moment, the sclera of Little Black's eyes had turned blood-red, and his eyeballs had become vertical, like a cat's eyes. No, to be precise, like a wolf's eyeballs when they were vertical. Even though Han Fei was their master, he couldn't help but be taken aback at a glance. However, the two little guys still ran to Han Fei's side. Seeing their intimacy, Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, I was scared to death. At this moment, Han Fei looked at Little Black and Little White's data again, and his pupils constricted. Spiritual beast name Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish Introduction. This is the descendant of the mysterious ancient Yin-Yang sky swallowing fish. The black and white fishes accompany each other. The white fish is docile, while the black fish is cruel. They are symbiotic. As long as one of them survives, the other will not die. Level 30 quality mysterious stored spiritual energy greater than 100,000 points, food omnivorous, can swallow everything. Combat skill supreme yin-yang wheel, consumes 5,000 points of spiritual energy per breath. Remarks the blackfish is invisible. Except for the master, only the yin-yang divine eyes born by heaven and earth can see through it. After the fusion, their combat power will be greatly increased, and they are comparable to divine weapons. Gulp, Han Fei swallowed. Stored 100,000 points of spiritual energy? Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. Fusion? Comparable to divine weapons. These words deeply shocked Han Fei and made his eyelids twitch. Holy shit, there's a body fusion technique? Han Fei was stunned. Since Master Hexagon said that he would go out in a few days, then he would. He had to study the changes of Little Black and Little White carefully. However, Han Fei immediately looked at the Hexagon Starfish and said, Master Hexagon Starfish, let me ask you a question. Have your abilities changed after you reached level 30? The Hexagon Starfish rolled his eyes and said, Nothing. Han Fei said, Think about it. The Hexagon Starfish pondered for a moment. It seems that before level 30, my spiritual sense was not high. I was still young at that time. Han Fei's face was black. What else? The Hexagon Starfish rolled his eyes again. Oh, I seem to have obtained a kind of inheritance from who knows where, and I can set up arrays now. Wow, Han Fei was shocked. Didn't you learn arrays from a certain array book you found when you were hunting for treasures? The Hexagon Starfish hummed. Of course not. Who would look for that thing? The book is not bright and it won't flash. It just suddenly appeared in my head. Han Fei was surprised. Weird inheritance? When the Hexagon Starfish was level 30, he obtained some kind of weird inheritance. And at this moment, Little Black and Little White seemed to have encountered the same situation and seemed to have inherited some kind of power. Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel? No, I have to try it. With that said, Han Fei said to the Hexagon Starfish, Master Hexagon Starfish, you can advance here. Hurry up, don't waste too much time. There are still a lot of treasures waiting for us to dig. With that said, Han Fei left with Little Black and Little White. 100 kilometers away. Han Fei touched Little Black's head. Little Black, have you gained any new abilities? Show it to me. Little Black looked at Han Fei in a daze and suddenly opened his mouth. F***ck Han Fei took a few steps back and almost had a heart attack. He saw that the teeth in Little Black's mouth became extremely sharp. That thing was like a row of spirit artifact steel teeth, and there seemed to be a small rotating black hole in its mouth. Han Fei swallowed again. Open it again. This time, when Little Black opened his mouth again, Han Fei was still a little horrified. The teeth were sharp. Not only were they sharp, but there was also a faint red light on the teeth, as if there were blood stains flowing between the teeth. Han Fei quickly said, Close. Turn to your biggest size and show me. Little Black's body began to grow gradually, and it didn't stop growing until its body reached 1 meter. Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was originally about 3 meters, but now it became 1 meter, which was acceptable. As long as he didn't suddenly become 100 meters big, it would be fine. Otherwise, he would really become a sea monster. Han Fei turned his head to look at Little White. Daughter, do you have any new abilities? As if understanding what Han Fei meant, Little White directly opened its mouth, and then Han Fei felt that the surrounding spiritual energy began to gather. Huh! The spiritual energy gathering speed is so fast. F***ck, this speed, isn't it as fast as me setting up a small spirit gathering formation? No, it's even faster than a small spirit gathering formation. It's even faster than the superimposition of 3 small spirit gathering formations. At this time, Han Fei suddenly froze. After all, Little Black and Little White were still spirit-swallowing fish. Wasn't the most fundamental ability of spirit-swallowing fish to swallow spiritual energy? Okay. Now this ability was finally fully manifested. It was simply a mobile spiritual energy pool. Imagine, if you don't have a reserve of spiritual energy, you can still continuously absorb spiritual energy when fighting with others. If the absorption and output reached a balance, wouldn't you really have endless spiritual energy? Of course, Little White's spiritual energy absorption ability couldn't keep up with Han Fei's consumption. However, he saw a hope that could be realized. Han Fei grinned. Sure enough, Little Black and Little White were the best. After all, neither the 9-tailed mantis shrimp nor Little Gold showed such outstanding abilities at the moment as Little Black and Little White. Of course, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and Little Gold were not bad. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp was an all-rounder who could fight, control, and dig holes. If Little Gold grew to its complete form, it could condense the power of heavenly thunder, but unfortunately, it didn't seem to be able to now. Then Han Fei took out a section of the big red trunk that was tens of meters long from Forge the Universe and said, "Little Black, Little White, use the supreme yin-yang wheel to attack this tree." With a thought from Han Fei, Little Black and Little White immediately turned into 2 black and white mystic light. When the 2 mystic lights intersected, a rotating Tai Chi yin-yang pattern appeared. Perhaps because the speed was too fast, Han Fei could only see the black and white lights flickering. In the next moment, the supreme yin-yang wheel fell on the trunk of the big red trunk. Buzz buzz buzz, Han Fei was dumbfounded when he saw that. When he used the soft saw to pull the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, it was equivalent to an ordinary saw. Little Black and Little White were simply cheating. This was completely a chainsaw. Although it consumed 5,000 points of spiritual energy every second, the speed was nearly 100 times faster than a manual saw. Stop, stop, stop. Okay, Han Fei hurriedly stopped Little Black and Little White. It was just an experiment. There was no need to cut the tree. However, looking at Little Black and Little White, Han Fei suddenly had an idea. Maybe I should go to the Seaweed City Wall. Chapter 371. Han Fei didn't choose to fuse with Little Black and Little White, mainly because he was afraid of losing control. This time, Little Black and Little White's strength could be said to have undergone earth-shattering changes. If Little Black and Little White's combat power was 5 before, then with the supreme yin-yang wheel, their combat power soared to at least 50, which was a completely different concept. During the few days of waiting for the hexagon starfish, Han Fei didn't stay idle. While practicing the incomplete monograph on 10 ways of body polishing, he was also studying the speed formation. The grand ceiling formation shook. Han Fei couldn't remember how many times it had shaken. He couldn't help tilting his head and looking at the hexagon starfish that was losing a lot of spiritual energy. It's been a day and a night. Hasn't he succeeded yet? Look at Little Black and Little White. They advanced in an instant. How can this hexagon starfish be like this? Why does it waste so much spiritual energy to advance? It's too unreliable. It doesn't look like a mysterious creature at all. Little White was frantically devouring the spiritual energy emitted by the hexagon starfish. Han Fei stopped practicing. This was the 5th time someone had found this place. Han Fei put a kitchen knife on his waist and held the blue sea wandering dragon bow in his hand. After a while, a young man and a young woman came here. When the young man saw Han Fei, he frowned slightly and then looked at the hexagon starfish with vigilance. The young man asked, Your contractual spiritual beast? Han Fei nodded lightly. It's making a breakthrough. Don't disturb it. The woman next to the young man said, There are many seals here, but only you have such a large spirit-gathering formation. Why? Han Fei still looked indifferent. I set it up myself. What do you think? You set it up yourself? The young man and woman looked at each other and seemed very surprised. The young man asked, Do you know that something big happened in the deepest part? Someone said that there seemed to be a big tree missing there. Han Fei smiled faintly. You mean the big red trunk? I know. I also got the message and came from outside. Who would have thought that my contractual spiritual beast would level up halfway? The woman said, Since you have come here, don't you take back your contractual spiritual beast? Why don't you go inside and find out? Seeing their unnatural expressions, Han Fei guessed that they were talking telepathically. He couldn't help but smile casually. I don't know what's going on inside. However, I met someone on the way who said that it was already occupied by sea creatures. If you're not afraid of death, then go ahead. The armor box on the young man's back fell to the ground. I advise you to tell me the truth. Is there a way to quickly pass through this seal? Also, what happened to the big red trunk forest? Han Fei raised his hand, pulled the bow, and shot 3 consecutive arrows. Bang, 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 battle spirit gong. Each arrow was stronger than the previous one. With Han Fei's peak-level combat power, even a peak-level fishing master would have to block his 3 arrows for a while. The young man opened his armor, his shield behind him and his saber in front of him. Boom, 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 the arrow shattered, and the woman disappeared without a trace. But Han Fei didn't mean to stop. He shot another arrow, and 1,600 points of spiritual energy burst out. The man's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly transmitted his voice, Come back. At that time, Han Fei flipped his hand and slapped the seawater in the upper left corner. With a clink, a figure flew out. At this moment, Han Fei's 4th arrow hit the man's armor shield with a boom, blasting him back 5 or 6 steps, and his hands were dripping with blood. Han Fei sneered. I'm giving you face, so just take it. If you take one more step, I'll kill you both. In fact, it was not that Han Fei didn't want to kill these people who came to pick on him, but he had tried once for the first time. 3 people came to pick on him, and he wanted to kill them directly. However, he didn't expect that all 3 of them had flash stones. At the last moment of life and death, he directly flashed away. He had fought for so long in vain. If Han Fei guessed right, these 2 people also had flash stones, which seemed to be a must-have for entering the seaborne grassland. Since he couldn't kill them, he just needed to deter them. Anyway, when the hexagon starfish finished its advancement, he would leave. He didn't have time to waste with these people here. Sure enough, as soon as the 2 people saw Han Fei's ferocity, they easily defeated the 2 of them. Without saying a word, they retreated directly. After 2 hours, Han Fei could no longer feel the spiritual energy around him. He paused and immediately looked at the hexagon starfish. The latter opened its eyes. The hexagon starfish nodded. It's done. Han Fei said, Then let's go. Since when did I become your guardian angel? Look, I've driven away 5 waves of people for you. The hexagon starfish rolled its big eyes. Thank you? Han Fei jumped on its back grumpily. Let's go to the seaweed wall first and see the seaweed monster. The hexagon starfish said, I can set up a concealment array to deceive it. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled. Deceive it? I'm going to meet it. After all, that damn thing still owes me 10 dry leaf worm grasses. This is good stuff. I have to ask it for it. Han Fei felt that he had been cheated miserably on the way. Since he met Yang Ruoyun, he hadn't had a smooth journey. Fortunately, although the road was tortuous, the result was gratifying. However, he couldn't beat a tough character like Yang Ruoyun, and he didn't want to have too much entanglement with her, for fear of being killed. But other people, or not necessarily people, such as the damn seaweed monster, he had to retaliate. That thing used him as a gun and even put something called soul lock on him. So if he didn't get it a red ball, it would blow him up. As soon as the hexagon starfish heard that Han Fei was going to find the seaweed monster, it slowed down and rolled its eyes. No. Starfish don't fight and you can't beat it. Han Fei sneered. Just say that you can't beat it. But do you know what level that guy is at? It looks quite powerful. The hexagon starfish shook its tentacles. I don't know. It shouldn't be very powerful. But it is very powerful in that place. There are all seaweed there, which is very annoying to starfish. Huh. Then just like Yang Ruoyun, it is only powerful in a specific area? That is to say, as long as it goes out of the seaweed city wall, it is just a melon skin? What is a melon skin? Han Fei waved his hand and said, Don't worry about it. Is there a way to lure it out? The hexagon starfish's big eyes rolled left and right. I don't know. Han Fei sighed. Okay, can you stop rolling your big eyes? I'm dizzy. Master Hexagon Starfish, among the arrays you inherited, are there any very advanced concealment arrays? I think so. After passing through the lotus fish area and the insect fish pit, they passed other places at full speed. 100 miles away from the seaweed city wall, a big starfish was sneaking in the mud, shuttling forward. Its body surface was emitting a faint red light. However, its breath was very weak, as if it was covered by something. When approaching the seaweed city wall, the big starfish sneakily popped out of the soil with 6 big eyes. Seeing that the seaweed was not moving, it immediately drilled into the soil, as if trying to pass through the seaweed city wall from underground. Underground, the hexagon starfish seemed to be talking to itself. What if it eats me? Starfish can't fight. Then you'd better save me quickly. I've only been free for 2 years. I don't want to die yet. No, your concealment array is too lousy. I feel seaweed coming. Under the seaweed city wall, a large area of seaweed was wriggling. If Han Fei could see it from the perspective of a third party, he would find that these seaweeds were chasing the position of the hexagon starfish and seemed to be waiting for it to go a little deeper before attacking. After a while, when the hexagon starfish went nearly 100 miles deep into the seaweed city wall, suddenly, the earth shook and large tracts of seaweed poked into the mud. At that moment, the hexagon starfish immediately turned around and began to run at full speed. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was a matter of course. After all, crossing the seaweed city wall was far more than 100 miles. It might be nearly 700 or 800 miles. From a common-sense point of view, of course, turning back was the only way to save his life. Therefore, the faster the hexagon starfish ran, the faster the seaweed pierced him. No matter how Master Hexagon Starfish rushed left and right and even used seals to protect himself, he was surrounded by seaweed after running less than 50 miles. The hexagon starfish shouted, "I'm just passing by. Don't force me to fight." As a result, a leisurely voice sounded, "Do you have a red ball on you? Hand it over." The hexagon starfish shouted, "I've already eaten it. The big red trunk inside is gone, and I just grabbed one." The seaweed suddenly froze. How is it possible? How could the big red trunk disappear? You lied to me. The hexagon starfish suddenly shrank and jumped out of a pile of seaweed with a swish. It's really gone. Even the roots are gone. They were taken away by sea demons. Sea demons? How is it possible? How can there be sea demons here? With that said, the seaweed completely burst out and went straight into the ground. Clumps after clumps, together with the soil, were rolled up. The hexagon starfish shouted, "Help!" The hexagon starfish was wrapped by large clumps of seaweed and dragged out of the ground. As soon as it came out of the ground, its body became big, about 50 or 60 meters long, and its 6 tentacles emitted purple light as if it was shrouded by an array. The hexagon starfish spun like a top. Immediately, countless seaweeds collapsed as if they were cut by a sharp blade. "You can't escape. If the red ball is gone, I'll eat you too. The effect will be the same. The hexagon starfish was scared out of his wits, and his 6 big eyes were rolling. But in the face of the overwhelming seaweed, which was mixed with a lot of vines, the hexagon starfish finally couldn't turn anymore. Like a stuck axle, it was forcibly fixed in the seaweed. The hexagon starfish secretly said to Han Fei, "Help me. If you don't help me, I'm going to die." In a door of the hexagon starfish, Han Fei said leisurely, "Master hexagon starfish, didn't you say that you couldn't hear what I said in the door? How come you can hear me now?" The hexagon starfish was about to cry and hurriedly said, "At that time, my door was sealed. Ever since you broke the seal, I was able to communicate with the people inside the sect." Han Fei asked, "Oh? Is that so?" The hexagon starfish said anxiously, "Yes, yes." Han Fei said, "Don't worry, the seaweed monster hasn't come out yet. If it wants to eat you, it will have to show its true body, right? Otherwise, wouldn't we have done this in vain?" The hexagon starfish panicked. "If you hadn't threatened me by crushing my essence blood, how could I have come here as bait? Shameless, despicable, asshole." For a time, no matter how gentle the starfish was, he was forced to start swearing. Han Fei said, "Don't panic. Calm down. Put a seal on yourself first. Anyway, you can set up the array quickly. As long as the monster dares to show up and approach, you can throw me out. I'm sure it can't eat you." Outside. Needless to say, the hexagon starfish had already been covered with purple light. This was his special skill, the 6-gate array. This was the strongest array of the hexagon starfish, and it could even seal the effect of flash stones. Now, the tables had turned. If Han Fei didn't come out, the hexagon starfish would almost certainly die, even if it was a mysterious creature. The seaweed monster's voice sounded leisurely. "What a strong seal. Unfortunately, this is the world of seaweed, and I am the master here." The hexagon starfish's big eyes rolled. "Where are you? Should I spit out the red fruit? The red ball has penetrated deep into your flesh and blood. How can you spit it out?" "Don't worry, I will be there in a while, and I will slowly suck you dry." When Han Fei heard this news, he was speechless. So the seaweed monster is still far away from here? So, it is indeed not the kind of super creature that is so invincible that as long as there is seaweed, there will be it? Han Fei couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He was afraid of encountering a weird creature like Luo Xiaobai who could walk through spiritual plants. That thing was like Xia Xiaochan's teleportation. If you want to catch it, you can't catch it with ordinary speed at all. The wait went on for a full 2 hours. Han Fei was speechless. How King far is it? But the question was, since the seaweed monster was so far away, where did its voice come from? Could it be that it could transmit its voice from thousands of miles away? He waited for another moment. Finally, a dark green ball appeared. Yes, it was a ball, with a radius of less than 10 meters, and the surface was sticky like moss. On the ball, there were many circles of vines with vine leaves growing on them. This ball had no eyes, no tentacles, no mouth. It had nothing. When the green ball rolled over, it seemed to tremble for a while when it saw the hexagon starfish. "Red ball," the hexagon starfish's eyes rolled. "We are both exotic creatures. Why don't you let me go?" "Go? For so many years, I just hoped to get a red ball, but I didn't get what I wanted. Now, after eating you, I can have a red ball, transform, and awaken my talent. How can I let you go?" When Han Fei listened to the hexagon starfish, he was speechless. "Transform? Like Yang Ruoyun? Are you King kidding me?" He really gave the hexagon starfish the red ball. Otherwise, the seaweed monster wouldn't necessarily embarrass the hexagon starfish. After all, if the hexagon starfish really wanted to leave, it would be very troublesome even if it could stop it. But after the hexagon starfish swallowed the red ball, it was different. With this seaweed ball's obsession with the red ball, it would never let it go. The hexagon starfish was also puzzled. Can't you transform after eating the red fruit? You won't become a sea monster. Nonsense. The green ball hit the six-gate formation with a bang and then said, "That's you. My duty is to guard the big red ball. As long as one day someone can bring back a red ball for me, I can transform and become a demon." After hearing it, Han Fei felt it was ridiculous. Those who went in have no memory. Who can bring you a red ball? Besides, all the guys who have eaten the red ball have turned into fish. How can it be your turn? Even if there are occasionally one or two people whose memories haven't disappeared, you may not be able to catch them. Take the Sun Mu trio for example. Yang Ruoyun threw them out of the big red trunk forest. Did they go out? Han Fei felt that they must have gone out. After all, although he had taken their sea-swallowing seashells and weapons and accessories, their spiritual weapons were mainly kept in their bodies. The spiritual weapons in the sea-swallowing seashells were all unowned, probably to prevent any accidents or for other purposes. But once they woke up and took out the spiritual weapons in their bodies, they would still be in the level 3 fishery. Would the top masters in the level 3 fishery really have no way to pass through the seaweed wall? Outside, the hexagon starfish reported in horror, saying that the seaweed ball was summoning countless vines, trying to strangle its six-gate formation. After about 10 minutes, the hexagon starfish said, "No, should I strengthen the formation? Help." The monster stretched out a straw from the ball. "It wants to suck my blood." Han Fei was speechless. "Do you even have blood?" However, he was immediately puzzled. "It's not a mosquito. Where did the F*King straw come from?" The outside world. The big green ball excitedly stabbed the hexagon starfish with the 3-meter-long, steel needle-like straw. However, just when it was about to succeed and the straw had just pierced the hexagon starfish, a figure suddenly appeared. The seaweed ball was shocked and immediately wanted to run away. But before it could move, a golden yellow SE's net had already covered them. "I told you to run." He grabbed the mouth of the net tightly and tied a dead knot. Then he looked at the ball contemptuously. "Are you surprised? Are you surprised? It's you? How is this possible? Where did you come from?" Han Fei waved his hand and dozens of blue sea-wandering dragon daggers cut off the uncontrollable vines in the blink of an eye, rescuing the hexagon starfish. After breaking free, the hexagon starfish immediately became the size of a palm and lay on Han Fei's shoulder. "You can't let it out. I was almost sucked dry by it just now." The ball was rushing left and right in the spirit forbidden net in a panic. "What is this? Let me out. Where's my spiritual energy? Where's my spiritual energy? Please let me go. I can give you dry leaf worm grasses. I can give you 10 more. No, I can give you 100 more." Han Fei said disdainfully, "Humph! Do you think I am stupid? There are so many treasures in the world. I can cultivate with dry leaf worm grasses. It's just a few grasses. It's just a few stalks of grass. It's not worth it for me to risk letting you go." The seaweed ball panicked. "What can I do to make you let me go? I don't want the red ball. I will never come out again." Han Fei sneered. "What does it have to do with me whether you come out or not? Do you think you can have the red ball just because you want it? If you hadn't put a soul lock on me, maybe I could have cooperated with you. But you just had to die. Who can you blame?" The seaweed ball begged, "I still have spiritual energy. I have infinite spiritual energy." "Duong," Han Fei kicked the ball and sneered. "When I was a fisherman, I knew that no one could have infinite spiritual energy. You? Now that you're caught by me, you still have endless spiritual energy? Throw it out. Peel off your shell and let me see how much spiritual energy you have." Suddenly, the seaweed ball trembled and didn't speak. Han Fei smiled. "You don't want to be peeled off? Do you want me to pull you out of this ball? Trying to act mysterious by wrapping a ball around your body? Do you really think you're a ball?" Chapter 372. When he saw the ball, Han Fei didn't see any information, so he knew that there was something wrong with it. Or rather, there was indeed a creature inside, but it was definitely not the seaweed ball itself. Without giving the seaweed ball a chance to beg for mercy, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers cut the seaweed ball into hundreds of pieces as if it were a watermelon. Then, Han Fei was dumbfounded. So was the hexagon starfish. Han Fei's lips shivered. So, this thing is an octopus? A string of information popped up in his eyes. Name Divine Seaweed Octopus. Introduction: an extremely rare creature in the deep-sea jungle that mutated after accidentally eating the essence of seaweed. It can freely control spiritual plants that have no consciousness. To a certain extent, it can share a life with seaweed. It can't be killed without special means in a place overgrown with seaweed. It's very weak and timid, and it usually doesn't show up. Divine Grass Pearl. If you eat it, there's a small chance that you can gain the ability to control seaweed. Level 39 Quality, Exotic, Mutated, Spiritual Energy greater than 15,626 points. Effect: can greatly increase spiritual power and soul resistance. Collectible Divine Grass Pearl. Absorbable. Han Fei was rather speechless after seeing the information. So, was this guy really just a wolf in sheep's clothing? He was very weak, but he was so good at bragging, and he claimed that he could be given 10 dry leaf worm grasses? At this moment, the divine seaweed octopus was also dumbfounded and shrank into a ball. In fact, it was very large, even larger than the seaweed ball that it was wrapped in. However, octopuses were creatures that liked to crawl into narrow spaces. Han Fei had fished out bottles and jars more than once. Once, he fished out a large bottle with a capacity of 9 liters and a diameter of less than 5 centimeters, only to find that an octopus more than 30 centimeters thick was hidden inside. This seaweed octopus was exactly like that. Based on Han Fei's estimation, this thing was almost as big as Mr. Hexagon's starfish. However, it had shrunk into a ball less than 10 meters in diameter. Don't kill me. I'll get you worm grasses. At this moment, the big octopus was still trembling and talking to Han Fei. Han Fei grinned widely. Cordyceps? I'm not in a hurry at all. I really want to get you now. Han Fei went up and punched and kicked him. I told you to put a soul lock on me. I'll let you fool me. How dare you threaten me? Who asked you to block my way? This is what you get for acting tough. This is what you get for bragging. Who asked you to grow ugly like grass? In the hexagon starfish's dull eyes, Han Fei kicked for 10 minutes. Finally, Han Fei twisted his neck. I feel much better. It feels great to hit a sandbag. The divine seaweed octopus had been reduced to a punching bag, so it didn't dare to speak or ask any questions. Anyway, Han Fei didn't use any spiritual energy when he beat him, so he just let him beat him. At this moment, the divine seaweed octopus asked weakly, Can you let me go? Han Fei sneered. Master Hexagon Starfish, activate the 6-gate array. What? Drive it down and throw this guy in. The divine seaweed octopus was suddenly refreshed, but the hexagon starfish quickly said, No. My 6-gate array doesn't seem to be able to trap it for a long time. Han Fei chuckled. Don't you have the spirit forbidden net? Are you afraid that it will run away? Hearing what Han Fei said, the hexagon starfish was relieved and raised its 6-gate formation. Han Fei threw the divine seaweed octopus into the 6-gate formation, and then with a thought, he put the spirit forbidden net above the 6-gate formation. As long as this damn green octopus made a move, the spirit forbidden net would cover it with a swish. Han Fei, on the other hand, sat on the head of the divine seaweed octopus with 2 blue sea wandering dragon daggers and 30 others floating next to him. Han Fei said, Get me 10 dry leaf worm grasses first. Then, I'll consider whether or not to let you go. The divine seaweed octopus was stunned. Even if it had 3 hearts and 9 brains, so what? Under this kind of absolute control, even if he had 100 brains, it would be useless. The divine seaweed octopus said, No. I can't use my abilities when I'm trapped in the seal. Poochie, before it finished, Han Fei's knife pierced through its head. Think before you speak. What did you just say? No? Fine, fine, fine. The divine seaweed octopus was almost crying. Did he have to be so brutal? With a swish, Han Fei pulled out the knife and nodded in satisfaction. Okay, what are you waiting for? Get me the dry leaf worm grasses. The divine seaweed octopus dangled its tentacles. But there are no worm pits here. Before Han Fei said anything, the hexagon starfish said, That's easy. I know where there are worm pits. Human, can you get me 2 dry leaf worm grasses too? Han Fei grinned and waved his hand. Not a problem. The divine seaweed octopus almost wanted to kill the hexagon starfish. What the hell are you doing here? Without the giant octopus, the seaweed wall seemed to have disappeared all of a sudden. Until the hexagon starfish took Han Fei to the worm pit 100 kilometers away, they didn't encounter anything special. Although the seaweeds would still harass them, it was just their instinct. At this moment, the seaweeds were crawling into the worm pits crazily. Han Fei was appalled to see that tremendous seaweeds withered and eventually turned into smithereens. He felt lucky that he didn't fight those worms earlier, or he would have been dead. Han Fei couldn't have been more delighted when he got the first dry leaf worm grass. What a great stuff! If he had 10 dry leaf worm grasses, he was confident that he could push the indestructible body to a new height. The dry leaf worm grass alone had wiped out the seaweeds in the thousands of meters nearby, or even more. Of course, the seaweeds were soon replenished. 1, 2, 5. When the divine seaweed octopus attacked the 8th worm nest, the worm nests rioted. It was not just one worm nest rioting, but an earthquake. Hundreds of worm nests seemed to be rioting at the same time. Tremendous dry leaf worms surged out of the ground like locusts. The divine seaweed octopus said, Not good. The worm king is coming out. Han Fei simply pulled down the spirit forbidding net and tied up the divine seaweed octopus. Then, he jumped on the hexagon starfish. Run, run, run. Why is there a worm king in this damn place? While running like a shooting star, the hexagon starfish replied, I don't know. Han Fei stabbed his dagger into the head of the big octopus. Tell me, why are the worm nests rioting? The divine seaweed octopus said in a hurry, I don't know. Maybe it's because I killed too many worms? Pa, pa, pa. Han Fei raised his hand and slapped the octopus. That's for bragging. You've been dominating this place for so many years, and you don't even know where the Worm King is? You have a big head. When swarms of dry leaf worms surged out, Han Fei found that everything within his sight was scorched in the blink of an eye, and a lot of vines withered. Thankfully, Han Fei reacted fast enough, or he wouldn't have been able to escape if he had been a moment later. However, what Han Fei didn't know was that the worm nests were rioting not only in this place. Within a radius of thousands of miles, and even further away, there was a riot. Some people were passing through the seaweed wall after hearing the news of the seaborne prairie, only to be swallowed by the worm nests without leaving any bones behind. Some people hadn't gone deep yet, but they were scared out of their wits when they saw the worm burst. They simply retreated the way they came and fled crazily. At this point, Han Fei stabbed dozens of blue sea wandering dragon daggers into the divine seaweed octopus. Do you really think I'm an idiot? You did it on purpose, didn't you? The big octopus was stunned by the daggers. It said in fear, I didn't. I really don't know. Worm bursts do happen in this place occasionally, but it has nothing to do with me. Worm bursts? How? The big octopus shivered. All the worm pits are bursting out. Hiss, Han Fei's heart was cold. What did it mean when all the worm pits were bursting out at the same time? There was no way for him to survive at all. Han Fei watched the hexagon starfish crazily crawl into the green places, but the seaweed 50 meters from the bottom of the sea had almost all been corroded. Han Fei had no idea how many worm pits were hidden underground. The hexagon starfish was fast, but it was impossible to get rid of it. It was because the worm pits were bursting out in more than one place. Also, weirdly enough, the worms were chasing him for some reason. Looking at the divine seaweed octopus that had curled up, Han Fei wondered, is it really behind this? Han Fei secretly released his spiritual senses and finally found something wrong. The blue sea wandering dragon daggers sank into the big octopus's body and stirred. As it turned out, the divine seaweed octopus was secreting a sticky liquid when it was running. The sticky liquid was very small. There was only one drop of it dozens of meters in diameter. If Han Fei hadn't been fooled by Yang Ruoyun, he wouldn't have guessed it at all. However, he observed it 3 times, and every time the liquid dropped, the worm nests would riot. Han Fei said coldly, "Surrender or die. Make your choice." "Surrender, surrender. Don't kill me. I can be your contractual spiritual beast. Stop messing around." Han Fei's lips curled. "Since you've surrendered, don't resist mentally. Come back." Chapter 373. Seeing that the divine seaweed octopus was gone, the hexagon starfish was so shocked that its eyes widened. "Where's the octopus? Where did it go? Do you have a space that can hold living creatures?" Han Fei rolled his eyes at it. "It's already dead. I threw it into my sea-swallowing seashell." "Wait. It's not dead. Hiu! Hiu!" Dozens of blue sea wandering dragon daggers disappeared into Han Fei's body, and he said fiercely, "I said it's dead, so it's dead." The hexagon starfish shuddered in fear. It was scared of Han Fei now. It felt that this human was a monster. A man who could even share the spoils of a sea demon. A man who came back to kill the enemy after being threatened once and threatened to crush its essence blood. This man was too ferocious. After the divine seaweed octopus was taken care of, the dry leaf worms stopped following them. Han Fei immediately grinned. "You're really a drama queen. Are you going to get yourself killed by playing with me?" Outside the seaweed city wall, the running character switched over. Fearing that it would be too conspicuous, the hexagon starfish shrunk to the size of a palm and lay on Han Fei's shoulder. Han Fei, on the other hand, swam all the way. There was nothing worth exploring in this place. Perhaps there were more secrets hidden in a corner of the seaborne prairie. However, it didn't matter to Han Fei. The seaborne prairie must have been overturned recently. He had run into several groups of people in a place that should have been uninhabited. Very soon, Han Fei saw 3 people standing in his way. One was a woman carrying a broadsword that was taller than a person, and the other 2 were an armorist and a hunter. The woman blocked him with her broadsword. "Stop," Han Fei asked. "Guys, are you here to rob me?" Han Fei's perception range was only 300 meters, so he couldn't avoid running into other people or other creatures. This was already the 3rd wave of people before them. Of the first 2 groups, one was already dead and the other ran away. The woman's face was cold. "You escaped from inside?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "Yes." "What happened inside?" Han Fei grinned. "You'll know if you go and take a look. Brat, you'll answer whatever I ask you. Otherwise, killing an intermediate dangling fisher like you would be a piece of cake for us." Before the woman could speak, the armorist next to her had already spoken. This armorist was tall and strong, with a long beard, which made him look rather ferocious. Han Fei glanced at him casually. "You should be more informed outside than inside, right?" The woman stared at Han Fei coldly. After a while, she said, "I heard that the big red trunk in the deepest part has disappeared. Is this true?" Han Fei shrugged. "Why do you all think I should know about the big red trunk? I don't know what happened to Big Red. However, it's true that an insect plague broke out in the seaweed city wall." The expressions of the 3 people on the other side changed. "Insect plague?" The hunter immediately denied. "That's impossible. The insect disaster hasn't happened in years." "How could it be?" Han Fei said lazily. "So, you'll know what's going on after you take a look. How annoying. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. However, just when Han Fei was about to move, the woman raised her knife. Since you came out from inside, I naturally believe you. I won't ask about the things inside anymore. But Han Fei, don't you think you're too arrogant to show up now? This time, it was Han Fei's turn to change his expression. How do you know my name? In the blink of an eye, the three people fused with their spiritual beasts, the hunter disappeared without a trace, and the armor box was spewing out weapons. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and a big seal appeared in his hand. He aimed at the seal on the upper right side, and in an instant, the seawater rolled back. Before the hunter dodged, a blue sea wandering dragon dagger appeared next to him. When he tried to dodge, Han Fei had already stabbed him in the heart. On the other side, the woman and the armorist hadn't taken action yet. Seeing this scene, their expressions changed greatly. The armorist instantly withdrew his weapon and exclaimed, "How can he be so strong? Didn't the wanted list say that he was only an intermediate dangling fisher?" The woman also immediately withdrew her weapon. He was too strong. This was completely beyond their expectations. Among the three of them, she was the only one who was an advanced dangling fisher, and the other two were both intermediate dangling fishers. One of them was killed in the first round. How could they continue to fight? Han Fei shouted, "Hey, don't you think it's too late to run now?" Han Fei's figure flashed, and he was about to take action, when he suddenly found that the two of them swooshed at the same time. They disappeared? Han Fei, damn flash stones. How can there be such damn things? Han Fei was rather speechless. Everybody who escaped from his hands did so with flash stones. That thing could crush a person with a pinch, and there was no way to chase them. In Han Fei's impression, the price of things like flash stones was not cheap at all. When he got a flash stone from a treasure-hunting fish, someone offered 4,000 mid-quality pearls for it. But now, why did everyone he met have one? Or did these people only have one to save their lives? Han Fei took the hunter's sea-swallowing seashell and took a look. There was only a pair of low-quality spiritual weapons. There was not even a spiritual fruit left. He couldn't help but throw them into Forge the Universe in disgust. Han Fei frowned. Why did they know him? There seemed to be more and more people coming to the Seaborn Prairie. He had already encountered 3 waves on his way here. Based on this ratio, the Seaborn Prairie might have been surrounded. On his way out of the Seaborn Prairie, he was more or less safe. Because it was different from the way he came, some strange marine creatures appeared and slightly disrupted his pace, but it didn't matter. On his way, Han Fei ran into another 2 groups of ambushes, but Han Fei only killed one of them, and the rest all crushed their flash stones and ran away. The hexagon starfish said, "It seems that there are more and more human beings." Han Fei nodded. "No, there are indeed more and more." After leaving the Seaborn Prairie, Han Fei immediately floated to the surface of the sea and took out the Wind God boat. When the red and white Wind God boat appeared on the surface of the sea, it was even cooler than the most glamorous yacht. In particular, there were 2 protruding tail fins, just like the tail lights of a car. As soon as Han Fei controlled the Wind God boat, the Wind God boat swooshed out. In the blink of an eye, it had run dozens of kilometers. Shoot, it's so fast. It was the same feeling as when an airplane took off and accelerated. Han Fei felt that he had to gasp for breath. The hexagon starfish said, "That's weird. This thing flies faster than me." Han Fei said in disdain, "What do you think? Except for the fact that it can't enter the sea, the speed of this boat is the fastest in the fishery." The hexagon starfish asked, "Then are we going to find the treasure with it?" "Of course. Didn't Yang Ruoyun give us a map? Whether it's fake or not, it's always good to take a look. What if it's real? It's only 10,000 kilometers away from here. We should be there in 2 hours." The hexagon starfish asked, "Didn't you say that it was fake?" Han Fei said, "That's right. What if the woman gave me a real map?" Because Han Fei was very confident in the Wind God boat, This was the craziest and most high-profile trip he had ever taken. Swish, swish, swish. Wherever the wind god boat passed, the wind blew and waves surged, raising waves more than 50 meters high. The waves that were stirred up on both sides spread out layer by layer, and the furthest one could reach nearly a kilometer. Even Han Fei's previous advanced fishing boat would take him 6 hours to cross the distance of 10,000 kilometers. Ordinary fishing boats could only see a red shadow passing by in front of the wind god boat. So, from time to time, fishing boats exclaimed, "It's a ghost speed divine boat. Son of AB*TCH, which young master from the Thousand-Star City is traveling this time? Oh my God! I actually saw a ghost speed divine boat. Huh. A red ghost speed divine boat is rare. Huh? Why haven't I heard of a red ghost speed divine boat?" What's more, many fishing boats began to follow the ghost speed divine boat. Wherever a ghost speed divine boat appeared, something big was going to happen. Recently, the sea grassland was the most lively place. Rumor had it that the big red trunk was gone, attracting countless people to hunt for treasures. Of course, Han Fei couldn't hear these exclamations at all. He was driving the boat too excitedly. Han Fei was wondering how many little girls would want to experience it if it were in the past. Of course, ordinary people couldn't sit on it. A boat that could reach 5,000 kilometers per hour shouldn't appear at all. But if it did, how could it withstand this speed without a physique? More than 3 hours later, Han Fei finally found a seal covered by sea anemones in a small trench at the bottom of the sea. Han Fei stood by the sea anemones and looked at it for a long time before he asked, "Master Hexagon Starfish, do you think this secret realm has been explored? Go in and you'll know." After thinking for a long time, Han Fei still stepped in. After a moment, the hexagon starfish rolled its big eyes. "Sure enough, you've been tricked again." Chapter 374. Han Fei was very calm. Holding the water-dividing seal, he clapped at a dilapidated house in the secret realm. He didn't walk out until the house collapsed with a smile. The hexagon starfish muttered, "Human beings are really bad." "Shut up." At this moment, Han Fei was even more certain that Yang Ruoyun was just a bluffer. She looked serious, but when she started to deceive people, she was the best bluffer in the world of bluffing. This godforsaken place was a wasteland. There was a dilapidated house inside, half broken, and rocks were everywhere inside and outside. Not to mention treasures, there wasn't even seaweed. Even crabs that could drill in anywhere were nowhere to be seen. Han Fei was a little surprised. What did she mean? Did she build this secret realm just to deceive people? Wasn't the price of deceiving people too high? The hexagon starfish rolled its eyes. Maybe she's already been here. Han Fei nodded heavily. Most likely. Master Hexagon Starfish, let me tell you, next time a woman offers to cooperate with you, you must not trust her. How can I tell men from women? Han Fei paused. Forget it. Han Fei thought it was not reliable to rely on others to provide information about dangerous places. Now that he had the wind god boat, he had to find a place to cultivate and deduce the technique first. Just as Han Fei swam to the surface of the sea, 5 people swam towards him. Han Fei immediately wanted to bypass them, but the distance between them was too close. Before Han Fei bypassed them, he had already bumped into them. Han Fei wondered why this kind of thing always happened to him. The 5 people were also stunned. One of them quickly took out a booklet, flipped through it, and then asked Han Fei via voice transmission, "Are you Han Fei?" Han Fei. Han Fei was puzzled. "You know me again? Who are you?" The 5 people on the opposite side were overjoyed. "Kill!" Han Fei. Faced with the unexpected encounter, Han Fei was still dumbfounded. However, the situation at that time didn't allow him to think too much. The 5 people on the opposite side came very quickly. This was a perfect combination with all 5 professions. Among them, the manipulator and the spirit gatherer were both female, advanced dangling fishers and junior dangling fishers respectively. Among the other three, the Soul Warrior was an advanced dangling fisher, and the other two were intermediate dangling fishers. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Sun Mu and the other two were already safe and had begun to cast a net on a large scale. Were they coming for him? The female manipulator looked a bit like Su Yebai, who was also a sea spider spiritual beast. White spider webs weaved through the seawater and soon covered a large area. The Soul Warrior's spiritual beast was actually a mess-swallowing worm, and he also used dual knives and attacked extremely fast. He instantly created a stream of water in the seawater and appeared in front of Han Fei. Ding ding ding, at this time, how could Han Fei show weakness? Attached to the nine-tailed mantis shrimp, he slashed at the enemy with two knives. At the same time, the nine-star chain burst forth, piercing into the void 100 meters away. The opponent's hunter's figure flashed quickly. The man hurriedly said to the others via voice transmission, "His perception range is more than 100 meters. Hearing this, all five of them were shocked. Although theoretically, a dangling fisher should have a perception range of 100 meters, it still required luck. Ordinary people couldn't even perceive 50 meters, let alone 100 meters. Clatter, 30 knives appeared next to Han Fei at the same time, and the Soul Warrior who was facing Han Fei immediately changed his expression. How is it possible to control 30 knives at the same time? The man immediately retreated and said telepathically, "Armories." However, the blue sea wandering dragon daggers followed him like a shadow and stuck close to the Soul Warrior. In the blink of an eye, dozens of wounds were left on his spiritual energy protective cover. When the enemy armorist's torrent of knives and swords swept at him, Han Fei ignored them and still chased after the Soul Warrior. "Tell me, how do you know me?" The opponent's manipulator tried to pull the Soul Warrior away with spider silk and bind Han Fei with spider webs. However, the daggers on Han Fei's side rolled and all the spider webs were cut. Bam! The water-dividing seal turned into a seal tens of meters large and slapped at the Soul Warrior. The opponent tried to block it with his double knives, but with a crack, the knives were broken and he collapsed. The Battle Soul Master spat out a mouthful of blood, and both of his arms were fractured. Behind him, the hunter had just got rid of the nine-star chain at a weird speed. Two daggers. The daggers cut at the back of Han Fei's neck, but with a flash of cold light, a burst of knife chi leaped out dozens of meters in an instant. The hunter was directly cut into two halves. Retreat, retreat, retreat. 6 giant turtle shields appeared in front of the armorist and he sent a telepathic message to everyone in horror. However, the big seal slapped again. Boom, boom, boom. 4 of the 6 turtle shields were directly broken, and the armorist was directly slapped hundreds of meters away. The remaining spirit gatherer and the manipulator looked horrified and were about to run away. They were too scared. They didn't even use their contractual spiritual beast. The hunter was beheaded and the Soul Warrior was completely suppressed, unable to fight back. Even the armorist with the strongest defense was no match for Han Fei. What kind of monster is this? Run! Master Hexagon Starfish set up the formation. 6 rays of purple light shot up into the sky. Under the 6 gates formation, the 2 women directly collided with it. In the next moment, they were bound by the 9-star chain, unable to move. From start to finish, the battle lasted less than 10 breaths of time. Was Han Fei strong? Of course he was. However, the people he met before were all peak-level dangling fishers. That thing was not on the same level as intermediate or advanced dangling fishers at all. An advanced dangling fisher had to polish himself for a long time before he could reach the peak. There were also good and bad people among those who were at the peak. Ordinary people did not have resources, so naturally there was a huge gap in this realm. When facing Sun Mu and the others, Han Fei didn't even think about it and just ran away. However, in the face of these so-called perfect combinations, Han Fei's eyes were wide open. His explosive power and rich combat skills were reflected. Was the saber manipulation art not powerful enough? Of course not, it was just that he couldn't hit a peak-level dangling fisher at all. As for the soul warrior in front of him, he was already covered with cuts and bruises. Han Fei stabbed each of the 4 people, cut their hearts, and then broke their arms. And at this moment the manipulator tried to escape with a flash stone, but as a result, he directly hit the 6 gates formation. Huh! Han Fei chuckled. These people liked to hit the formation with flash stones. How desperate they must be! The manipulator was also stunned, feeling cold all over. At this moment, in her eyes, Han Fei was like a demon. Only the children of the high and mighty families in the 1,000-star city could have this kind of terrifying ability, right? After a moment, on the fishing boat, Han Fei directly covered these 4 people with the spirit forbidden net. Suddenly, these people's hearts sank. They had heard of the spirit forbidden net but had never seen it. Who knew that this time not only did they see it, but also a more advanced one. Han Fei sat on a long chair in the cabin, tilted his head, looked at these people, and said, "Answer what I ask. First, how do you know I am Han Fei?" The soul warrior smiled bitterly. "You have been listed on the level 3 fisheries wanted list. The reward is 100 gold-colored spiritual fruits, 100 caddies of spiritual spring, a high-quality spiritual weapon, a demon-level combat skill." Han Fei immediately took a breath. "Am I so valuable? Is it the booklet you read before?" The soul warrior nodded and took out his sea-swallowing seashell. Han Fei took it. There was nothing good in the sea-swallowing seashell, so he didn't bother to search it. Taking out the booklet, Han Fei immediately flipped through it. The first page. First on the wanted list. Name: Mo Qianshang. Gender: male. Profession: Armorous spiritual beast. Golden arowana contractual spiritual beasts. Mess swallowing worm, illusion jellyfish. Unknown specialties: good at weird knife formation, shadow stabbing sword. Stream reward: 5 million mid-quality pearls. Other rewards: 1,000 caddies of spiritual spring, 2 demon-level high-quality cultivation techniques, 5 high-quality spiritual weapons, and 1,000 spiritual fruit. Comments: extremely dangerous. He once strangled 62 peak-level dangling fishers in the 10,000 Smokes Valley. He once destroyed 3 secret realms and killed more than 100 people. Remarks: this person is extremely vicious. No one who has seen his face has survived. There were also 2 portraits of Mo Qianshang attached to the booklet, one with a fish skin mask and the other with the lower half of his face. Han Fei was speechless. The price was much higher than his. However, when Han Fei saw the comments, he couldn't help but be a little touched. This guy is a bit strong. How strong is this armorist who killed 62 peak-level dangling fishers alone? As he browsed through the booklet one by one, he turned to page 32, and a very familiar name appeared in his vision. 32nd on the wanted list. Name: Xia Xiaochan. Gender: female. Profession: hunter spiritual beast. Shadow shrimp, unknown giant fish contractual spiritual beast. Red flame tricky lobster. Special features: shadow kill technique, stealth kill technique, supreme stab, suspected, teleportation reward, 3 million mid-quality pearls. Other rewards: 300 caddies of spiritual spring, 1 demon-level high-quality cultivation technique, 1 high-quality spiritual weapon, and 300 spiritual fruit. Comments: extremely dangerous. He once killed 2 people in a row in the Cave of Death, including 16 peak-level dangling fishers. No one below the advanced dangling fishers can defeat him. He is extremely fast and good at teleportation. He has a spiritual beast with a second talent and his strength is unfathomable. Remarks: this woman doesn't seem to be in a stable relationship. When she goes berserk, her strength is comparable to the top 10 on the wanted list. The last place she appeared was about 50,000 kilometers away from the undersea city. In the end, there was a portrait of Xia Xiaochan. She was expressionless, but she was also beautiful and cute. Gulp, Han Fei swallowed. Did Xia Xiaochan have an attack? 22. Chapter 375. Han Fei flipped through the pamphlet again, and his good mood disappeared. Xia Xiaochan had an attack. This was a serious matter. Han Fei couldn't imagine what Xia Xiaochan would do after her attack. In this level 3 fishery, it was not like in the Thug Academy. At home, even if she had an attack, Han Fei wouldn't really hurt her. But in the outside world, especially in a place like the level 3 fishery, no one would show mercy to her. Han Fei couldn't help but look at those people. Is there a time limit for all the people recorded in this book? How often will it be updated? The Soul Warrior gritted his teeth. Usually, it's changed every 7 days. Because someone on the dragon boat wants them to die, the time must be relatively accurate. Otherwise, it will be easy for them to escape. Han Fei frowned. When was this pamphlet released? The day before yesterday. The day before yesterday? Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. If it was the day before yesterday, didn't it mean that Xia Xiaochan might not have reached the undersea city yet? According to Han Fei's understanding of Xia Xiaochan, if she hadn't had an attack, it was impossible for her not to go to a well-known place like the undersea city. However, when he looked at the location of the undersea city, he found that it was 150,000 kilometers away from him. Even if he moved at full speed, it would take him 2.5 days. Han Fei frowned. It might not be good for him to catch up with her in a hurry. Xia Xiaochan's ability to escape was extremely strong, even better than his own. Now it was urgent for him to improve his strength, and at the same time, he was being hunted. If he went there, he might attract more people. At that time, the pursuers would not be ordinary dangling fishers, but peak-level dangling fishers. Han Fei continued to turn to the 59th page before he turned to himself. Number 59 on the wanted list. Name: Han Fei. Gender: male. Profession: Soul Warrior, Spirit Gatherer. Spiritual Beast: Spirit Swallowing Fish. Contractual Spiritual Beasts: Mantis Shrimp. Unknown Species, good at using 9 chains. Unknown, extremely fast, with 2 wings, suspected to be a legendary contractual spiritual beast. Special features: Million Knife Art. Unknown Seal Bounty: 500,000 mid-quality pearls. Other rewards: 300 caddies of Spiritual Spring, a demon-level high-quality cultivation method, a high-quality spiritual weapon, and 300 spiritual fruits. Comments: dangerous, cunning, good at arrays. He had killed more than 20 dangling fishers in the Seaborn Prairie. Note: this man is extremely cunning. Kill him as soon as you see him. He is suspected to be related to the changes in the Seaborn Prairie. Bang! Han Fei slammed the chair, startling the 4 people in the spirit forbidden net. Han Fei's face suddenly became extremely awful. What the hell? I'm already ranked 59th? Was the fish blind? Snipe? 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 I'm being hunted. What did he mean by killing no less than 20 dangling fishers? What did it mean to be ruthless? It was obvious that someone was slandering him. Among them, he deliberately did not mention that those who died in his hands were all peak-level dangling fishers, and he described himself as being hunted instead of being hunted. The person who wrote this book had evil intentions. Han Fei looked at them coldly and asked, "Who wrote this booklet?" The Spirit Gatherer quickly said, "We don't know. It's just that it's sold on the dragon boat. We just need to buy it." Han Fei recalled that he didn't encounter such a thing before. Maybe he was busy on the dragon boat. He was either busy drawing prizes or refining weapons and didn't really read them one by one. So, he didn't find this booklet earlier. Han Fei continued to read patiently. He didn't see Luo Xiaobai, Lu Renquang, and Zhang Xuanyu until the 100th page. Seeing that the 3 of them were not on the list, Han Fei couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Once he was on this booklet, he would be the focus of the Level 3 fishery and receive the attention of countless people. But what Han Fei didn't know was that somewhere, in a corner, Zhang Xuanyu was also holding the latest wanted list. When he saw that both Xia Xiaochan and Han Fei were on the list, he immediately wailed, "These two be asterisk stards, they're doing something earth-shattering again. No, I can't lose to them." Han Fei put away the booklet. He couldn't get a new booklet in time since he couldn't get on the dragon boat, so he had to keep it safe. Han Fei squinted at them. "Tell me, what's the most sensational thing you've heard recently?" The manipulator said, "So far, the most sensational thing is that the big red trunk in the Seaborn Prairie is gone." "That's bull's asterisk it. Aren't the 10,000 Smoke Valley and the Cave of Death big?" The manipulator shook his head. "Of course not as big as the Seaborn Prairie. The big red trunk is the most mysterious central area of the Seaborn Prairie. Nobody knows the secrets there. Now that the big red trunk is gone, there are rumors that sea demons have appeared in the Seaborn Prairie, and there seems to be a riot there. 2 dragon boats have come here recently." Han Fei's eyes constricted. 2 dragon boats have come? Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. No wonder he met so many people recently. It turned out that 2 dragon boats had come. It seemed that he couldn't stay in this place anymore. Han Fei asked again, "How much is this booklet?" The few of them were stunned. "Could it be that you still have to give us money?" The Soul Warrior said, 100 mid-quality pearls." Han Fei's face immediately darkened. So cheap? Didn't it mean that anyone could afford it? Then how many people knew him and Xia Xiaochan at this moment? Pondering for a long time, Han Fei asked in confusion, "Why did so many people come despite the riot in the Seaborn Prairie?" At this moment the armorist said, "Because too many people want to take the opportunity to look for opportunities. In fact, most people's purpose is not the Seaborn Prairie itself, but to kill people for their treasures." Han Fei chuckled. "Kill people for their treasures? Who's going to kill who? Do they want to die?" The armorist shook his head. "Whenever something big happens, the nearest dragon boats will come to explore. The people who kill people for their treasures are not from the dragon boat." Han Fei sneered. "If they're not from the dragon boats, are they all from the sea?" However, to Han Fei's surprise, the armorist nodded and said straightforwardly, "Because so many people have come from the dragon boats, the real ghost boats of the level 3 fishery may come too." "No. Wait a moment." Han Fei thought for a moment and said, "The ghost boats are too small. There are only a few people on them. Do they dare to hunt the people who get off the dragon boats in large batches?" The armorist shook his head. "It's not a regular ghost boat, but a real ghost boat, the only one in the entire level 3 fishery." Han Fei was immediately interested. Go on, go on." But the armorist looked at Han Fei. "Can you let them go first? As long as you let them go, I will tell you everything." Han Fei sneered. "Are you negotiating with me? Why don't you take a look at your current situation?" The armorist gnashed his teeth. "We are no match for you at all. You can kill us at any time. However, it doesn't make sense to kill us. You seem to despise our sea-swallowing seashells. In that case, what you want to know must be information. And I know the most comprehensive information here." Han Fei narrowed his eyes and considered for a moment. Then he pointed at the Spirit Gatherer and the Soul Warrior and said, "You too go." However, the Spirit Gatherer grabbed the armorist's arm tightly and seemed to be unwilling to go. The armorist said angrily, "Go!" The Soul Warrior took a deep look at his companion beside him, then pulled up the female Spirit Gatherer, walked out of the hole opened by Han Fei, and then jumped into the water. Han Fei dared to let them go because one was weak and the other was seriously injured, so he was not afraid that they would bring trouble to him. As the armorist said, he was not interested in these people's lives or their sea-swallowing seashells, but he was very interested in the information. Han Fei said with a smile, "Now, can you tell me?" The armorist glanced at the manipulator next to him. Han Fei said coldly, "Don't push your luck. If you can tell me clearly and comprehensively, I will consider letting her go." But if I find that you have misled me in the slightest, I will kill her immediately. This was not the time to be merciful to women. Those who dared to take the risk had long been prepared to die. In Yang Ruoyan's words, "You kill me, I kill you." This seemed to be the most fundamental purpose of selecting elites in the Level 3 fishery. The armorist sighed. Everyone knows that there are dragon boats and ghost ships in the Level 3 fishery. In fact, there is a basis for the ghost ships we usually talk about. In the Level 3 fishery, there is a huge ship that walks on the bottom of the sea. Han Fei interrupted, "No. Wait a minute. You mean a ship that walks on the bottom of the sea?" The armorist nodded. "Yes." Han Fei was dumbfounded. F***ck, a submarine? Chapter 376. Han Fei was shocked that there was a giant ship walking on the bottom of the sea here. His teacher didn't mention it when he came here. The armorist looked at Han Fei. "That's the dark world of the Level 3 fishery. The outside world calls that ship the Evil Shield. Because no matter who you are and what you have done, no one will care about you on that ship. Of course, that's the saying on the dragon boat. Outside, we all call it the Spectre ship, because no one knows where it will appear. But as long as something big happens, it will always be there." Han Fei didn't quite believe it. It was said that the dragon boat was the safest place in the Level 3 fishery. He had just gone there, and someone had already killed him. Han Fei sneered. "So, isn't the Spectre the safest place in the Level 3 fishery?" However, the armorist and the manipulator nodded at the same time. Han Fei smiled. "Do you think I'm stupid? If it were so safe, why would it run into the water?" The armorist shook his head. "Because this ship is full of people of all walks of life. They don't know each other and don't interfere with each other. I've never heard of any malicious murder on the ship. However, it's only on the ship. There were also many people who were openly tailed the moment they left the ship and were killed on the spot." Han Fei was speechless. "What's the difference between that and killing people on the ship?" "Of course there is," the armorist said. "You just need to prepare a few more flash stones." Han Fei had a headache. He didn't know where the flash stones were dug out from. With them, they could often save their lives. In this way, the stronger they were, the less likely they would die. Han Fei asked, "Do you know where flash stones are dug out?" This time, it was the armorist's turn to be stunned, but the manipulator said straightforwardly, "Flash stones can be found in many places. A large number of flash stones are occasionally found in the Valley of 10,000 Smokes, and there are also some in the undersea mines. But the undersea mines are usually controlled by some strong masters, and there are dragon boats there all the time. Some are obtained from the treasure-hunting fish, but the chance is too small. The flash stones are mainly controlled by the dragon boat. Every once in a while, some will be released." Han Fei thought for a moment. "Forget it. I have money anyway. I can just buy this kind of thing." Thinking about that, Han Fei asked, "So, the Spectre is already here?" The armorist shook his head. "I don't know, but 2 dragon boats have come here. There's no reason why the Spectre won't come. However, it shouldn't appear so soon. It would not show up until the battle in the Seaborn Prairie was over. At that time, those who are really familiar with the Level 3 fishery often choose the Spectre instead of the dragon boat." "Why?" The armorist said, "If enough people die, a lot of sea-swallowing seashells and related trophies will appear. They were also sold on the dragon boats, but if they were sold to the shops on the dragon boats, it would be easy for others to trace them. Unless you go to the ghost market. But the ghost market on the dragon boat is an extremely dangerous place. It's okay to go there. But if you sell it, forgive me for being blunt, but if you have something really good, you won't even know how you die in the future." Han Fei was silent for a moment. Didn't he cause the subsequent series of consequences because he sold magic weapons on the dragon boat? However, Han Fei asked in confusion, "How do you know all this?" The armorist said frankly, "Because I am an armorist, and I have a great demand for weapons. If you are not an armorist, of course you don't know. But no armorist who has stayed in the level 3 fishery for more than a year will go to the ghost market on the dragon boat. They will even be very careful when buying. Damn it, Han Fei spat. This armorist really had a lot of secrets. Han Fei's face turned cold. What are the conditions to go to the Spectre? The armorist said, there is no condition to board the ship. You can board at any place, and no one will chase you and ask for any fees. After boarding, you will see black robes and masks everywhere. Just put them on. Han Fei asked in surprise, I can go there at any time? The armorist shook his head. Of course not. After putting on the black robes and masks, you must enter the cabin within half an hour, or you will trigger the defense of the Spectre. At that time, anyone can appear, kill you, and take away your sea-swallowing seashells. Han Fei smiled. Go on. The armorist continued innocently, there are many doors in the cabins. Even if you go in, you will have to pay a fee. 1,000 mid-quality pearls can be used for 24 hours. There are no so-called rooms or lounges inside, but all the cabins are trading areas. On the Spectre, there is nothing that you can't trade. If you trade with the Spectre, the price will be reduced by 50%. If you trade with others, you must pay 20% of the price of the traded goods to the Spectre. Otherwise, you may be expelled or killed on the spot. While the armorist was talking, Han Fei stared into his eyes, only to see that the armorist didn't dodge his eyes at all. Han Fei nodded slightly. How do you know when the Spectre appears? Han Fei was tempted. If it was really as the armorist described, the Spectre would be a good place to go. He had a lot of sea-swallowing seashells, and if he sold them all for spiritual fruits, it would definitely be a considerable number. Ghost Horn. When the Spectre appears, evil laughter will erupt within 10,000 kilometers. We call it the Ghost Horn. Han Fei was speechless. Isn't the Spectre afraid of running into a dragon boat? Of course not. 30 years ago, an unparalleled war broke out between the Spectre and the dragon boat. At that time, the Spectre ship fought against 5 dragon ships on its own and even sank one of the dragon ships. As he spoke, the armorist's eyes were full of yearning. It is said that in that war, countless black-robed men spontaneously took action and fought against the people on the dragon boat. The seawater was dyed red and corpses were everywhere. There was also a strong master of the Spectre who fought against 5 hanging fishers alone and killed 4 of them. Since then, no dragon boat dared to attack the Spectre at will. Since then, the name of the evil shield has become famous in the level 3 fishery. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. 1 ship fought against 5 ships? 1 man fought against 5 experts of the same level? Suddenly, Han Fei squinted and said, Wait, isn't there a hidden fisher in the level 3 fishery? The armorist smiled noncommittally. It was because of that war that the hidden fisher came to the level 3 fishery. That hidden fisher once launched another war against the Spectre. However, he was killed on the spot by the owner of the Spectre. Wow, Han Fei was stunned. That's a bit King strong. The hidden fisher was killed on the spot? The big shot behind the Spectre seemed to be ridiculously strong. Han Fei asked, Did no one care about it after that? The armorist shook his head. I don't know. Anyway, since that time, there has been no war against the Spectre. Because the Spectre never took the initiative to fight, over time, even if the dragon boats encountered it, they would ignore it. Han Fei was shocked. A ship had been forcibly described into a legend. It seemed to be the real hero in the level 3 fishery. Han Fei closed the spirit-forbidden net and pointed to the manipulator. Hand over your sea-swallowing seashells and I'll let you go. Both of them were taken aback. Were they going to be let go? Was Han Fei really just asking them for some basic information about the level 3 fishery? Han Fei sneered. It's boring to kill you. Let's go. The manipulator threw away his sea-swallowing seashells. Compared with his life, his sea-swallowing seashells were nothing. Watching the 2 of them leave, Han Fei smiled. Spread the news. Tell others that I am here. Han Fei deliberately let them go. First, since this place was already chaotic enough, he wanted to make it more chaotic. The evaluation of him on the wanted list was too simple, and many people might mistakenly think that he was weak. He felt that since he was on the wanted list, he might as well take this title. Second, didn't they put him on the wanted list? He had enough of being hunted all the time. Then he might as well make everyone tremble with fear this time. To this end, Han Fei steered the Wind God boat to the periphery for another 5,000 kilometers in a high-profile manner. Then, instead of running away, he put away the Wind God boat and sat cross-legged in the sea. Han Fei said, "Master Hexagon Starfish, for the next period of time, you'd better hide at the bottom of the sea. If necessary, get me out of this place." Save you? You'll understand when the time comes. Han Fei took out a dry leaf wormgrass, bit it in half, and swallowed it. Indestructible body, refine. Chapter 377. The dry leaf wormgrass contained enormous energy. Han Fei didn't know what the word enormous meant. However, he had seen how much seaweed the divine seaweed octopus had consumed for a dry leaf wormgrass. At this moment, when the dry leaf worm grass entered his body, surging torrents of energy burst out in his body. Han Fei's body immediately became much fatter. However, Han Fei took out another dry leaf worm grass and swallowed it again. The hexagon starfish was shocked. "Are you crazy? You'll explode if you eat any more." Han Fei grinned. "Since we're going to play, let's play big. Hide." Then, Han Fei took out a third dry leaf wormgrass and swallowed it again. After swallowing it 3 times, Han Fei's skin cracked like a porcelain doll, making cracking sound. However, the sound was not only made by his skin, but also by his flesh and bones. Break. Han Fei had always felt that his indestructible body was tough, but it was not as powerful as the venerable level combat technique. He had always felt that it was still lacking. Because of that, Han Fei had lost the advantage of his physique when he was a fisher and a great fishing master. Back then, old Jiang said that he became fat because of a drop of candle dragon blood, which contained enormous energy. How painful was it when Han Fei absorbed the energy of the candle dragon blood? He was burned by that energy for 3 days and 3 nights. Later, he tried to cultivate, but he didn't get to the bottom of it. He wanted to take the opportunity to completely break the barrier. Han Fei's body was already dripping with blood after only 1 minute. Because of this, a lot of fish came. However, Little Black, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, and Little Gold protected him and tore the fish into pieces. The fish in the level 3 fishery were very shrewd. After the first test, they fled without a trace. A moment later, Han Fei's skin was burnt up, and his blood was evaporating and drying. But because of the support of enough spiritual energy and energy, new flesh and skin were growing quickly. After being tortured again and again, Han Fei's body had become a source of spiritual energy. Spiritual energy flowed on the surface of his body, and energy exploded inside. 2 hours passed. Han Fei's body, which had been bloated by the energy, began to shrink quickly. 6 hours later, a fishing boat appeared with 3 people on it. They were shocked to see Han Fei's appearance. But while he was shocked, he was also pleasantly surprised. Taking advantage of others when they were perilous was a common thing in the level 3 fishery. At this moment, Han Fei was in the middle of a breakthrough and couldn't move. It was a good time for them to attack. Someone said, "Is that person Han Fei?" "That's right, it's him. This kid is simply courting death. He actually dares to make a breakthrough on the surface of the sea without the slightest fear. Kill." However, before the 3 of them were within 100 meters of Han Fei, 9 chains danced in the air and instantly caught one of them. At the same time, a golden-red shadow broke out of the water. Goldie's wings swept out a terrifying blade light and directly cut one of them in half. As for the person who was bound by the 9-star chain, his neck was suddenly bitten open, and blood spurted out. The remaining soul warrior was scared out of his wits. He immediately activated his flash stone and fled. 8 hours later, the 7th wave of people who came here died on the spot, and 5 of them managed to escape. Here, there were only a few unmanned fishing boats left, and Han Fei was sitting cross-legged in the middle of these fishing boats, covered in blood and flesh. However, this bloody figure could still stretch out his hand, grab a worm-shaped spiritual grass, and swallow it. After 8 hours of struggle, Han Fei felt that he was still not strong enough. This time, if he couldn't break the invisible barrier of the indestructible body art this time, it would be difficult for him to keep his body strong. After swallowing the 4th dry leaf worm grass, Han Fei could no longer make him fat. However, Han Fei's hands were ghastly at this moment, and white bones could be vaguely seen in his flesh and blood. If one paid attention, they would find that the hand bones were glowing. At the bottom of the sea, the hexagon starfish shrank its body, its 6 tentacles shrank together, and its 6 big eyes rolled. It thought that Han Fei had suddenly gone mad. He must be planning to blow himself up. It didn't know how much power the dry leaf worm grass contained. However, judging from Han Fei's posture, it was definitely a lot. 10 hours later, 2 more groups of people arrived. In the distance, there seemed to be a fishing boat coming across the sky. On the spot, the people on the 2 fishing boats said to each other via voice transmission, "Let's work together. Otherwise, no matter which of us attacks alone, I'm afraid we can't defeat those weird creatures underwater." In the sky, the fishing boat that rushed over shouted, "Guys, wait a moment. Can you wait for us?" However, as soon as he shouted, the 7 people on the 2 fishing boats closest to Han Fei immediately began to take action. 7 people came from 7 different directions. However, in the blink of an eye, one person was dragged to the bottom of the sea, and another was hit head-on by Little Gold, whose internal organs were all shattered. Someone was bitten to death by Little Black. But there were still 3 people not far from Han Fei. In an instant, the phantoms of spiritual beasts, contractual spiritual beasts, and spiritual weapons broke through the air, trying to kill Han Fei. But more than 30 blue sea wandering dragon daggers suddenly appeared around Han Fei. The surging daggers surrounded Han Fei and blocked those attacks. Immediately afterward, more than 30 daggers of spiritual energy divided into 3 waves and attacked the 3 people respectively. Unable to kill Han Fei with one blow, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Gold, and Little Black immediately pounced on him. Before the fishing boat in the sky landed, the 7 people were all killed. They were so scared that they hurriedly stopped the fishing boat and dared not move forward. Seeing this scene, 2 fishing boats coming from other directions also saw this scene. Han Fei could feel these people's emotions. Here comes the consequence of deliberately letting those people go. There was no such thing as mercy in the level 3 fishery. Even if you didn't kill people, others would kill you. The reason why Han Fei let them go was that he wanted them to inform others. Even if they didn't inform others, since the 2 dragon boats were here and they were so seriously injured, they would still be targeted by others. The end result was that more and more people knew that Han Fei was here. 6 hours later, the number of empty fishing boats around Han Fei had reached 7, but none of them attacked. The people on these 7 fishing boats were not far away from each other, and they were talking to each other via voice transmission. Someone suggested, "Why don't we attack together?" Someone frowned. "Han Fei is weird. Look here, there are nearly 20 empty fishing boats. How many people do you think have died?" Someone shouted, "Don't tell me he can scare off dozens of people on our ships all by himself?" Someone suggested, "Why don't we wait for another half an hour?" Everyone was silent. Whoever attacked first would definitely be in danger. Han Fei had completely revealed his trump card. The strength of the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and Little Gold was extremely shocking. No one was willing to be the first to court death. If they waited for more cannon fodder, Han Fei would definitely die under the crowd tactic. Deduce. Han Fei knew that he couldn't resist anymore, so he began to deduce the true spirit fishing art. Above the sky, dark clouds were densely covered, and in the clouds, thunder was rumbling. After several minutes, between heaven and earth, the wind was surging, and there was even a tornado forming in the distance. It suddenly rained cats and dogs. During this period, 2 more fishing boats appeared in the sky. For a moment, many people panicked. If there were more people, they wouldn't be able to divide them. At that time, another batch of people would die in the battle. Damn it, why does the weather change so suddenly? Let's do it. He's alone. How many spiritual beasts can he have? He's fighting for his life. He'll die sooner or later. Nobody thought that the weather had anything to do with Han Fei, because it was impossible for a human to shake the weather. They just guessed that something might have happened in the seaborne prairie. However, the affairs of the seaborne prairie weren't something that ordinary people could meddle in, so they didn't care. Kill him! There was no telling who shouted first, but in an instant, as many as 30 people charged at Han Fei. However, when they just stepped within 100 meters of Han Fei, dozens of lightning bolts fell from the sky. Rumble, the lightning flashed in the sky, and dozens of people were directly struck into charcoal. More than half of the 30 people were killed by the lightning. The remaining 10 or so people were all slapped into the water with electric arcs surging on their bodies. Swish, swish, swish among them. Half of them directly crushed their flash stones and instantly vanished on the spot. Some of them didn't have flash stones. They were all shocked. Why did lightning fall from the sky? In the distance, the 2 fishing boats that were already close turned around and fled. What did they see? Dozens of lightning bolts suddenly fell, and in the blink of an eye, dozens of people disappeared without a trace. Rumble! The second lightning fell, and Han Fei vomited another mouthful of blood after being hit. His muscles bulged, and his veins floated in his flesh and blood. This time, because there was no one else in the way, Han Fei was hit directly. But Han Fei was sitting in the water. When the lightning entered the water, the seawater within 100 meters exploded, and the waves rose to a height of nearly 100 meters. Run, run, many fishing boats that were coming all stopped dozens of kilometers away. Those who were closer immediately ran for their lives. Lightning was something that did not recognize people. Chapter 378. In the sky, black clouds rolled furiously, as if a giant city was pressing down from the sky. How thick and high were these clouds? Anyway, all the fishing boats nearby that were still in the air had landed. Some people directly withdrew their boats into the sea. After all, it was not a joke to be struck by lightning. 10,000 kilometers away, on the top floor of the 2 dragon boats, the 2 hanging fishers were stunned to see the heavy rain suddenly falling from the sky, and the wind was surging and the clouds were surging. Why did the weather change all of a sudden? Is it related to the seaborne grassland? On Han Fei's side, the wind and waves were getting stronger and stronger, rolling hundreds of meters high. Although not fatal to these dangling fishers, the fishing boats were really difficult to control. Even if these people escaped into the sea, they didn't dare to approach where Han Fei was. The reason was that the dozens of fishing boats around Han Fei were empty. They were not fools. Where did the people go? They were all dead. This doomsday-like awakening made those who came later only dare to stay 100 kilometers away, not daring to try to approach. Rumble. But no matter what happened outside, Han Fei had been disfigured by the lightning. He was more and more sure that the void fishing art was the most taboo technique. Just restoring it would cause chaos in the world, and the waves would spread for thousands of kilometers. This was only the 4th level. What would happen later? In the eyes of ordinary people, the changes in the weather might be just an irregular storm in the sea. However, in the eyes of some people, it was even more profound. In the Thousand-Star City, another strong master pinched his fingers and seemed to be calculating something. And in the sea, Han Fei was almost wrapped in spiritual energy into a ball of light. Violent energy was surging in his body. For example, his meridians should have been slowly strengthening, but when the lightning flowed into his body, many meridians were torn violently, causing Han Fei to bleed all over his body. Han Fei felt that he was almost out of blood. His clothes had long been destroyed, and his hair and eyebrows were all charred. Not to mention his hair, some parts of his flesh were collapsing. Fortunately, the power of the indestructible body was also reflected at this time. The more fiercely the lightning struck, the more the seemingly inexhaustible vitality surged out of his flesh and bones, trying to restore his body again and again. BM, BM, BM. The waves within 100 meters of Han Fei didn't stop at all. Every time the lightning struck, the surroundings would explode. Han Fei understood that. They were in the sea, not on land. The electric current would not flow into the ground, but into the sea. Anyone who had seen lightning or high-voltage electricity flowing into water knew that explosions were normal. Sometimes, an electric current could cause dozens of explosions. In Forge the Universe, the spiritual stones were crumbling one after another. But even under such a powerful bombardment, Han Fei still felt that the barrier of the indestructible body couldn't be broken. Damn it! Could it be that I really have to destroy all the meridians in my body and use my flesh and blood to bear the burden? Han Fei was very suspicious. The reason why Ren Tianfei achieved the indestructible body was that his meridians were all destroyed. But his situation was different. Since he could keep it, why destroy it? However, at this moment, Han Fei still felt that his meridians greatly suppressed the cultivation of the indestructible body. There was always a barrier that couldn't be broken. Damn it, I'm going all out. My life force is so strong that if I don't die, I'll succeed. Han Fei was no longer sitting cross-legged but rolling on the sea because of the lightning. At this moment, he struggled to grab 2 dry leaf worm grasses and stuffed them into his mouth despite the tearing pain all over his body. Just by eating, a large piece of flesh on Han Fei's arm was torn off. His bones were exposed at the elbow. When the dry leaf worm grasses entered his stomach, the magnificent vitality and energy refreshed Han Fei. Of course, what greeted him was an even more violent energy blast. Rumble, rumble, lightning struck again and again. The place where Han Fei was had been struck by lightning countless times. Huge waves of 100 meters were also raised countless times. On the periphery, especially hundreds of kilometers away, the people who came later were shocked speechless when they saw this scene. Someone asked in shock, "Didn't they say that Han Fei appeared here? Why is this happening?" Someone responded, "Who knows? We didn't see Han Fei, but those who chased him before must have died by now." Someone sighed. "Why are they still chasing him? Han Fei, as an intermediate dangling fisher, can't even resist one strike of such terrifying lightning. It seems that his name will soon disappear from the wanted list." Someone sighed. "What a shame. It'd be great if we could find Han Fei's body. At least we could exchange it for rewards." Someone was lost for words. "Why do you think everybody is here? They're waiting for the bad weather to pass before they search for his body." Someone shook his head. "If it were you, would you have left a body under such lightning? Not necessarily. What if he fell to the bottom of the sea earlier?" That was exactly what some people thought. They had swum to the bottom of the sea at this moment. They wondered how powerful the lightning was. It couldn't have reached thousands of meters deep, could it? Many people had the same idea, so some of them swam to the bottom of the sea below the lightning. Unfortunately, in this place, as soon as someone showed his head, he was attacked by something. After all, they could only see some chains before they died. 1 hour passed. The frequency of the lightning bombardment was getting lower and lower, and the rolling waves around were slightly smaller, but no one dared to approach. 2 hours passed. The lightning had gradually stopped falling. Although the waves were still surging and the rain was still pouring, it was no longer dangerous. Someone exclaimed, "Why does the weather seem to calm down so soon? Wait, why do I feel that this is not a natural phenomenon, but a sign of the birth of a rare treasure?" Many people began to doubt it. It didn't make sense. A while ago there was still lightning and thunder, and the sea was bombarded. But now it had calmed down? It was not until 2.5 hours later, when everyone was sure that the lightning was no longer falling, that someone dared to move the fishing boat forward slightly. However, immediately these people burst into exclamations. Someone, in the place where the lightning struck, someone is still alive. That's impossible. Bro, are you kidding me? Damn it, don't brag or I'll kill you. How is it possible for anyone to survive in such a situation? Is it a fragment of a fishing boat? Everyone was talking, and hundreds of fishing boats approached. But then, they were all shocked. In the middle of the surging sea, a blackened figure was trying to sit cross-legged on the surface of the sea. Yes, that was right. He was sitting cross-legged. Next to him, there were large pieces of fishing boat debris, which seemed to have been shattered by the lightning. There were also a lot of sea creatures that had been electrocuted and were floating on the surface of the sea. Who's that? Everyone couldn't help but have such a question in their hearts. That person was blackened all over and couldn't see anything. There was no comparison at all, someone guessed. Could it be Han Fei? The guys on the wanted list can't be estimated with common sense. Someone sneered. That's bullsh*t. Even if we all went in, we would still be dead. Han Fei? No matter how strong he is, he's just an intermediate dangling fisher. Someone snorted. Don't forget that the turmoil at the center of the seaborne grassland may be related to him. Logically speaking, even peak-level dangling fishers could die in it, let alone Han Fei. Someone was suspicious. Do you think someone has become a hanging fisher here? Suddenly, everyone fell silent. It was highly possible. However, someone still responded in a low voice. Do you think a hanging fisher can resist the lightning just now? I don't think so. When everybody stopped and watched, Han Fei opened his eyes. Gotcha. The burnt shell on Han Fei's body cracked. He was very weak, but he wanted to laugh aloud. He was weak because he had taken the lightning head-on. He wanted to laugh because he had made it through. The 6 dry-leaf worm grasses, the power of lightning, and a tremendous amount of spiritual energy helped him break the barrier of the indestructible body. Yes, his meridians were not broken. He had made it. The first limit of the indestructible body seemed to have been broken. Even though he was still weak at this moment, he could still feel the terrifying power in his body. Data popped up in his eyes. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 36, intermediate dangling fisher, spiritual energy greater than 12,526, 5001, spiritual heritage level 5, low quality spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish level 30, weapons blue sea wandering dragon daggers, water dividing seal, blood drinking knife main art void breaking technique. Volume 4 of Void Fishing, Demon Level, Divine Quality. Han Fei wanted to grin, but the corner of his mouth hurt and his cheeks were being torn apart. In the outside world, swish, he cast the divine healing technique on the top of his head. Gotcha, look, it's cracked. That man is cracked. Chapter 379. The black shell on Han Fei's body was cracking like a crispy noodle biscuit. As countless people held their breath, half of Han Fei's face and half of his chest were revealed in a moment. Han Fei opened his eyes and looked around. Hundreds of fishing boats were flying in the sky and watching him. Han Fei looked down and his face changed. He immediately took out a set of clothes and put them on. Then, spiritual energy shook, and the black shell on his body was all broken. But even so, Han Fei was slightly taken aback when he looked at his skin. He found that his skin was covered with fine cracks, and the cracks were vaguely bloody. Swish! Another divine healing technique fell on him, and Han Fei realized that something was wrong with him. Unlike last time, he was in his peak state after the lightning bombardment last time. But this time, he used 6 dry leaf worm grasses. The violent energy and vitality in his body made the energy in his body riot, causing his flesh and bones to be torn apart. Now, although he had survived, it seemed that some injuries still needed to be healed. Not just his skin, Han Fei felt that a dozen bones in his body were broken, and some muscles were torn. Of course, at this moment, Han Fei's internal injuries were healing quickly. However, the current situation in the distance. Finally, someone exclaimed, "It's really Han Fei. He's not dead." Han Fei, someone was shocked. Who is this guy? How could he resist the lightning? Someone asked, "Guys, should we take action? This guy seems to have a big secret. Once we kill him, there may be a great opportunity for us." Han Fei was speechless. Since when did he become an opportunity in other people's eyes? Swish, 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 nearly 40 blue sea wandering dragon daggers flew out of his body and surrounded Han Fei. Han Fei slowly opened his mouth and said, "Hey! Quite a lot of people are here." When all the blue sea wandering dragon daggers were unleashed, many people gasped. Everyone had a spirit artifact, but there was no one present who had 40 spirit artifacts and could control them with spiritual energy. Someone said solemnly, "Although we don't know how he survived the lightning bombardment, look, he seems to be an intermediate dangling fisher. He hasn't made a breakthrough." Someone reminded, "He is not only a soul warrior but also a spirit gatherer." At this moment, he seemed to be seriously injured and was treating himself. "We can't give him time to recover from his injuries. Otherwise, it will be difficult to chase after him again." More people took out their weapons. Some even possessed their spiritual beasts, and some summoned their contractual spiritual beasts. Han Fei grinned. "You want to kill me? Come down." Han Fei's plan was to frighten some people with the power of lightning. Who would have thought that apart from him, everyone else would be killed? That was why no one had seen him resist the divine might of the lightning. Therefore, the purpose of this deterrence was not achieved at all. At this moment, hundreds of fishing boats and hundreds of experts were on the scene. If it was in the past, he would have run away immediately. But now, although he hadn't recovered from his injuries, it wasn't that he didn't have the strength to fight. Han Fei even had an epiphany. He felt that he had become different. At least, among these people in front of him, although there were a few peak-level dangling fishers, the pressure they gave him was no longer there. Previously, on the dragon boat, a peak-level dangling fisher made him feel as if he was facing a formidable enemy and his life was in danger. But at this moment, the invisible barrier of the indestructible body art was broken, and the feeling of invincibility in the Level 1 and Level 2 fishery came back. Accompanied by Han Fei's invisible roar, the people around him became restless. Some people wanted to retreat, thinking that the people on the wanted list were quite weird. Since Han Fei dared to provoke them in front of so many people, he must have some tricks up his sleeve. Some people were disdainful, thinking that even though Han Fei was a genius, he was only one person. How could he resist the siege of so many people? Some people neither wanted to retreat nor attack. Anyway, they just wanted to stay here and watch. Maybe they would be able to benefit from the fight between the sandpiper and the clam. Han Fei, you have nowhere to go. Even if you have flash stones, since your position has been exposed, you have nowhere to escape to in this sea area. That's right, Han Fei, give me one of your spiritual weapons, and I won't embarrass you. Haha, one for each of us? I'm afraid that's not enough. Hand over your sea-swallowing seashell, and we won't attack you. The people around him were talking loudly. Some teased, some mocked, and some tempted. Han Fei glanced at those people casually and said, "You want my knife? Come and get it." With that, Han Fei sprinkled the brilliance of the divine healing technique on himself again. In the crowd, several peak-level dangling fishers couldn't sit still anymore. The peak-level dangling fishers said to each other via voice transmission, "We can't give him any more time to recover. This guy is weird. We should attack him decisively." Someone hesitated. "There are so many people here. If we attack him, won't others take advantage of him? Do you think those people will just stand by and watch if the three of us take the lead?" However, while these people were still discussing, on the other side, 5 or 6 people suddenly rushed forward. It turned out that a soul warrior took the lead with a bow technique, and dozens of arrows pierced through the sky and darted away. Suddenly, dozens of red vines grew out of the water and latched onto Han Fei's feet. In the distance, someone held a spear of spiritual energy and darted out. Another 3 soul warriors took action at the same time, one with a knife, one with a sword, and one with a spear. To the surprise of those peak-level dangling fishers, those advanced dangling fishers took the lead to attack. And at the same time, all the people who could use remote attacks took action one after another. Some armorists threw out torrents of knives and swords, and several soul warriors continuously shot arrows with bow technique. Gorgeous attacks were instantly displayed on the sea. Clang, clang, clang the barrage of arrows, as well as the shadows of blades, spears, and swords, hit Han Fei, but they merely made clanking noises, as if they were not hitting a human body but a piece of 9 heaven black iron. Someone was dumbfounded. How is this possible? Impossible, his physique. F***ck, however, just when the next wave of arrows was about to hit Han Fei moved away with a swish. At the same time, he stomped on the ground, grabbed a spinning blue sea wandering dragon dagger beside him, and shouted, "Attach!" Hum. At that moment, Han Fei stood proudly in the sky. His golden red wings unfolded and extended to 5 or 6 meters long, and 9 chains seemed to be fastened to Han Fei's clothes, trembling in the air. Han Fei dodged most of the attacks, and only a few spiritual energy arrows had the function of automatic tracking and caught up with Han Fei after a turn. However, no matter how the spiritual energy arrows fell on Han Fei's body, there was only a tinkling sound. After the spiritual energy arrows exploded, they still couldn't hurt Han Fei at all. Many people's eyes widened, full of disbelief. Someone exclaimed in a trembling voice, "How is it possible? He can fly? How is it possible?" Good. Many people were also stunned to see Han Fei standing proudly in the air. What was the concept of flying? They had never heard of anyone in the level 3 fishery who could fly when he was a dangling fisher. It's a contractual spiritual beast, a legendary contractual spiritual beast. Someone exclaimed in shock. What a terrifying opportunity it must be to get a legendary creature as a contractual spiritual beast. Someone said suspiciously, "Not good. Is he a descendant of a big family in the 1,000-star city?" Someone directly denied it. Impossible. There are too many descendants of big families in the 1,000-star city. How many of them have a legendary contractual spiritual beast? However, someone guessed, not necessarily. How can we see those heavenly talents? This Han Fei's identity is definitely special. Someone simply retreated. Killing Han Fei was no longer what they cared about. What kind of background did Han Fei have? That was what they were worried about. If Han Fei died, the person behind him casually came out and killed them. That would be a great injustice. Shut up. This is the level 3 fishery. So what if he is a descendant of a big family? In the level 3 fishery, life and death are predestined. That's the rule. Since you've already attacked, why are you retreating now? How can you achieve anything with such a weak belief? The soul warrior who took the lead to attack scolded. It couldn't be helped. Even if they really pissed off a big shot, they had to keep these people here. At that time, who would still remember who? Han Fei was speechless. How the hell did I become a descendant of a big family? Han Fei thought disdainfully, forget it. It's good that it's a misunderstanding. It can scare some people away. Han Fei's figure quickly streaked across the sky, randomly chose a direction, and rushed directly to a three-person fishing boat. "Since you want my treasure, come on! Coward, take this!" Chapter 380. Han Fei flew across the sky, and the three people on the fishing boat were speechless. "We're just here to watch the show. Why did you choose us when there were so many people?" Immediately, one of them was about to start the fishing boat to escape. However, the 9-star chain had already locked onto him. "We can't escape. Let's work together to repel him." At this moment, Han Fei had already stepped on the bow of this fishing boat, and the three people looked horrified and quickly fused with their spiritual beasts. Their contractual spiritual beasts condensed into phantoms behind them, but before they could fight back, Han Fei had already slashed at them with the blue sea wandering dragon daggers in his hand. Kacha, one of the intermediate dangling fishers, hadn't put down his armor box yet, and his spiritual energy protective cover had been shattered. In the next second, his eyes were bloodshot, and his neck had been cut open. Another intermediate dangling fisher soul warrior thrust out his spear, and at the same time, two giant pincers behind him clamped at Han Fei. In front of him, there was still a knife shadow slashing at Han Fei. However, as Han Fei slashed at him, everything collapsed. In an instant, the man was cut into two pieces. The last person had jumped off the fishing boat and was about to escape into the sea because he was the farthest away. However, he was caught by the 9-star chain in midair, and the next moment, a golden-red knife light swept past, and this person was also directly cut in half. Han Fei didn't feel the slightest guilt for killing these three people. On the floating island, no matter what role you played, kind, intimate, fierce, no matter what kind of person you were ready to deal with everything when you came here. Good or bad, it didn't make any sense here. Maybe some people were righteous, but they wouldn't be here. Those who could come here were all here to kill Han Fei. At that moment, Han Fei flashed in the sky, leaving golden-red phantoms. Because his speed was too fast, many intermediate dangling fishers couldn't cope with him at all. If they were caught by Han Fei, they would be wiped out in 2 seconds. With such combat power, which intermediate dangling fisher dared to stay? Run, run! Han Fei's strength has definitely reached the level of a peak-level dangling fisher. Retreat, this guy is too ruthless. It'll be too late if we don't run now. This guy is too fierce. Run. Almost in a moment, dozens of fishing boats began to flee. All the intermediate dangling fishers were horrified. They felt that they couldn't fly away quickly without a pair of wings. Han Fei's combat power was too terrifying. None of the intermediate dangling fishers was a match for him. Who could afford to fight him? Han Fei killed everyone and scared away a group of intermediate dangling fishers. The rest of the advanced dangling fishers didn't know whether to leave or stay. In fact, they all vaguely felt that although Han Fei seemed ferocious, he was attacking intermediate dangling fishers after all. Many people felt that they would not be killed with a single slash. However, just in case, many advanced dangling fishers shouted to each other, "Come on, let's kill this guy together. Go all out, don't hold back." Instigated by someone, a group of dozens of advanced dangling fishers came at him in their peak state. All of a sudden, the phantoms of various marine creatures appeared in the sky. Some of them weren't phantoms, but their real bodies. Poochie, walla, ding ding ding. At that moment, Han Fei held a knife with both hands, and the blue sea wandering dragon daggers had been completely covered by the torrents of knives and swords of the armorists. All kinds of spiritual weapons fell on Han Fei's body, making clanking sounds. Some people didn't make a move, but they were also dumbfounded. A good hunt turned out to be like this. It felt like a group fight, however. Although some people in the crowd were in a killing frenzy, some people on the periphery saw bodies falling one after another. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Are you King stupid? Kill him in the sky. Can you fly? Go to the sea." However, in the crowd, only a few people who had already been in a killing frenzy chose to retreat. Most people were fighting Han Fei with their fishing boat. It was not that they were really stupid, but they saw that Han Fei's skin was cracking. Cracks covered his body, as if his body would shatter at any moment. Many people thought that Han Fei, who was already seriously injured and fighting continuously, finally couldn't hold on anymore. No one wanted to give up this opportunity. However, as they fought, some people panicked. They found that there were fewer and fewer people around Han Fei. Even though Han Fei's cracked body was already bleeding, he was still fighting. In the face of countless knives and weapons, he was not afraid at all. Unfortunately, it was too late to react at this time. Han Fei was stained with blood, and his whole body was covered in blood. He didn't know whether the blood on his body was his own or someone else's. In the past, he would have fled long ago, but this time, not only did he not run, but he also fought more and more crazily. There seemed to be a raging fire burning and boiling in his heart. Come on. Don't you want my treasures? Don't you want my spiritual weapons? Come and kill me. Han Fei slowly landed from the sky and stood on the surface of the sea. Looking at the horrified advanced dangling fishers around him, he couldn't help but grin. Even though I'm heavily wounded, you can't possibly defeat me. Don't believe him. His body has been cracked to such an extent. I'm afraid he is overdrawing his vitality to fight. This kind of fighting method won't last long. A peak-level dangling fisher appeared. Standing in front of everyone, he made a guess about Han Fei's current situation. The other two peak-level dangling fishers were in the other two directions, and the three of them surrounded Han Fei in a triangular formation. Another peak-level dangling fisher said, "Have you noticed that this kid has consumed too much spiritual energy? This kid has already consumed too much spirit chi. Don't be fooled by his murderous aura, he won't be able to hold on for long." In the end, the remaining peak-level dangling fisher spoke. "Everyone, listen up. Starting from the three of us, you will attack together to kill Han Fei. At that time, all the spiritual weapons and treasures on him will be distributed to you. We only want his head and his combat skills." Others might not have noticed it, but they did. Han Fei's blue sea wandering dragon daggers were too weird. It seemed to just revolve around his body and slash the enemy. In fact, the way the daggers escaped was very tricky. Besides, the moment the daggers were out, there was a strange knife light. This was definitely a very terrifying combat skill. Han Fei twisted his neck, but as a result, several cracks appeared on his neck. F***ck, Han Fei was a little speechless. These were all caused by the remaining energy in his body, which could be regarded as injuries. Although he was bluffing now, in fact, his injuries were not light. At this time, suddenly a voice came, "Why don't we run?" The voice came from the hexagon starfish. No one knew which corner it was hiding in now, but it seemed to have seen Han Fei's current appearance. Han Fei didn't respond but looked at the three peak-level dangling fishers vigilantly. Were they afraid of him? Of course not. As peak-level dangling fishers, their life-saving means and spiritual weapons were not weak at all. He had to kill them with one blow. These three people were an armorist, a manipulator, and a soul warrior. It could be said that they were two long-range attackers and one melee attacker, which had a lot of ways to attack. However, when Han Fei felt the abnormal movement of the water, a subtle smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Clatter, suddenly, a water dungeon array appeared, and then circles of fine seaweed began to climb up Han Fei's body. This was not ordinary seaweed. Its blades not only had the ability to absorb spiritual energy, but their tips were also extremely sharp and seemed to be poisonous. At the moment when Han Fei was trapped in the water dungeon, the armorist took action. Dozens of weapons combined into a broadsword in the air and emitted dozens of knife shadows, stabbing at Han Fei from all directions. As for the soul warrior, holding a long sword, he roared 3 times in a row. Han Fei saw 3 waves of spiritual energy shining on the sword. And behind him, 9 soft tentacles stretched out, trying to tie up Han Fei. At the moment when the 3 of them took action, dozens of advanced dangling fishers also took action. Once again, the sky was full of shadows, knives and swords, and all kinds of contractual spiritual beasts swarmed at him. After 1 second, Han Fei's eyes suddenly turned cold, his body shook with spiritual energy, and he moved his feet, breaking the water dungeon array. The manipulator of the peak-level dangling fisher level changed his expression, and a massive amount of seaweed immediately grew out of the water. However, just after he did this, he was surprised to find that Han Fei actually glanced at him indifferently. That one glance caused him to feel fear in his heart, and he almost immediately gave up on attacking. However, it was too late. 3 chains stretched out from the bottom of the sea and directly buckled him, and the blue sea wandering dragon daggers in Han Fei's hand had become a kitchen knife at some point. The peak-level soul warrior was stunned for a moment. Such a short knife? Chapter 381. The soul warrior among the 3 peak-level dangling fishers was still in a state of shock. In his pupils, he only saw a knife light flashing past, and the scene in front of him disappeared one by one, and his eyes were full of blood red. He was a little confused. My sword is longer. I've stabbed him. Yes, Han Fei was stabbed by this person's sword. This person held a mid-quality spiritual weapon and attacked with all his strength, which was really powerful. Even if Han Fei broke the barrier of the indestructible body art, he couldn't block it. But although he couldn't block it, this sword didn't pierce through Han Fei, but just pierced Han Fei's shoulder and bone, which didn't hurt at all. But Han Fei's draw technique was no joke. Han Fei had enough spiritual energy, so he just needed to pour it into the knife. Even if that person had reached the peak, he would not be able to block the sure-kill skill of this supreme-grade spiritual weapon. In the next moment, with Han Fei as the center, an arc-shaped knife light swept out. In an instant, the advanced dangling fishers who surrounded him froze at the same time, and in the next second, blood appeared on their bodies. At the moment they saw this knife light up, almost at the same time, dozens of figures disappeared without a trace, including the armorist in midair. Some of them even abandoned their weapons and fled. No one saw clearly where this knife light came from. They only felt that a bright knife light cut across the water, which was terrifying, and the strong killing intent made them lose the will to fight. Fight? How could they fight? With one knife, a peak-level dangling fisher and an advanced dangling fisher were killed. This hunt was no longer something they could participate in. The manipulator held by Han Fei had already crushed a flash stone. However, he only felt a pain in his neck, and a piece of flesh was torn off by something. Then, the flash stone was crushed, but the next moment, it hit an invisible barrier. In less than 2 seconds, the people around had all run away, and Han Fei slowly walked towards the man. "Spare me!" Puff! Han Fei was already numb to the pain. Looking at the man's eyes that were filled with fear and indignation, Han Fei said lightly, "We're all adults. Since we've made the choice, we should be able to bear the consequences." At this moment, the hexagon starfish floated up from the bottom of the sea in horror, its big eyes full of horror. It had witnessed the entire scene. How was this still the weak youth from back then? This was clearly a demon. Han Fei twisted his neck again, but with a tearing sound, his skin cracked again. "Damn it, I have to heal myself. Let's go, Mr. Hexagon Starfish." After a while, Han Fei collected all the sea-swallowing seashells he could collect and swam in the sea with the hexagon starfish. On the dragon boat, the news of Han Fei's appearance had already spread, and no one knew who spread it. Therefore, more and more soldiers were dispatched from the dragon boats, most of whom were advanced dangling fishers. At this moment, the employment hall on the dragon boat was crowded with people, and all kinds of shouts could be heard. Form a team to explore the seaborne prairie. Only advanced dangling fishers are accepted. An advanced dangling fisher armorist. We need one more to explore the seaborne prairie. We need 2 more. A hunter and a manipulator, both advanced. Come on, all hunters, hunt down Han Fei, who ranks 59th on the wanted list. This guy showed up a few hours ago. I guess he hasn't gone far yet. We still have a chance." Such shouts could be heard all the time. Of course, there were those who asked for it. The hall was in full swing, and no one thought about what to do if they died. Those who could come to this place had all gone through hell and high water. Most of their opportunities came from adventures. If they didn't die, they would eventually make it out alive. At this moment, someone suddenly bumped into the crowd at the door and came in. "Not good, not good. Something big has happened. Who the hell is yelling? What's the big deal? Why are you so panicked? Who the hell are you? What did I shout just now? I can't remember it now. Damn it. Are you out of your mind? Of course we wouldn't be here if nothing big had happened." In the blink of an eye, the young man was surrounded, and for a moment, everyone was criticizing him. The young man smiled bitterly. Don't worry. Listen to me. That Han Fei. Can you King tell me or not? What happened to Han Fei? Didn't so many people go after him?" The young man took a breath and said, "They're all dead, all dead. Few of the pursuers came back alive." What did you say? They're all dead? Hey, don't talk nonsense. I'm trying to form a team. Why are they all dead? Make yourself clear." The young man said in horror, "The intelligence is wrong. The wanted list has made a big mistake this time. It's true that Han Fei is an intermediate dangling fisher, but he can't rank 59th. He has to be in the top 3. Just now, the lightning fell from the sky like a natural disaster. None of the peak-level dangling fishers could resist it." Hiss! The employment hall fell into silence. The chaotic scene immediately quieted down. A bearded man asked, "Can you be responsible for what you said?" The young man said angrily, "I saw the whole process. Han Fei fought 100 enemies alone. He's a devil. His blood dyed the sea red. He's Demon Han." A coquettish woman stood out. "Did he really fight 100 enemies alone? That's impossible. He's just an intermediate dangling fisher. How can he fight 100 enemies alone?" The young man said angrily, "What do you know? Han Fei has a legendary contractual spiritual beast that can grow gold and red wings and stand proudly in the void. What do you think? Is a man on the wanted list who can cause chaos in the seaborne prairie really a simple intermediate dangling fisher?" Hiss! A legendary contractual spiritual beast. Wings on the back? Isn't that exclusive to hidden fishers? Stand proudly in the void. Damn it. Dismiss. Let's not take this mission. The dragon boat has to give us an explanation. Aren't we going to get ourselves killed? Immediately, many teams that were planning to hunt him disbanded. The staff in the employment hall were also stunned. What the *CK do we know? We just followed the arrangement and accepted the mission. However, this mission is indeed a bit out of line. At the place where Han Fei fought just now, there were more than a dozen people standing. If Han Fei were still here, he would definitely recognize the 3 people in the lead. Weren't they Sun Mu, Yang Diyu, and Mo Fian? At this moment, Yang Diyu scratched his head. Oh my God, what kind of opportunity did that kid get from the big red trunk? How could it be so terrifying? Mo Fian's eyes lit up. Originally, she didn't intend to get the sea token. She just wanted to get involved in this. But who knew that she would suffer such a big loss? At the big red trunk's place, except for his clothes, everything that could be stripped was stripped by Han Fei. For her, it was not as simple as the sea token. She must catch Han Fei alive, then torture him again, and finally torture him again. Only Sun Mu's face was gloomy at this moment. This operation of hunting Han Fei could be said to be a huge loss. Originally, they should have been able to catch up with the battle just now. But Yang Diyu insisted on going back, saying that the bastard Han Fei must still be inside. As a result, they tried for several days at the Seaweed City wall. But because of the outbreak of the insect disaster, not only did they lose a few people, but they couldn't even take half a step in, As soon as they came back, they learned that Han Fei had already appeared outside. So they rushed over, and when they arrived, they saw this scene. As many as 50 or 60 broken fishing boats were still drifting on the sea, being slapped by the waves. The debris of some fishing boats still proved that they once existed. Under the sea, it was even more unbearable. Many people had been gnawed by the fish, leaving only a pile of white bones. The scene was very shocking. Young master, this child must have obtained some sort of heavenly opportunity. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to become so strong in such a short time. Yang Diu asked, Sun Mu, should we chase him or not? What if we catch up with him and can't beat him? Sun Mu glanced at him coldly. Are you sure you can't beat him? Then don't chase him. Yang Diu twitched the corner of his mouth. I want to chase him. It's none of your business. Mo Fian licked her lips and said, It's getting more and more interesting. I'm starting to like him, tsk tisk. Yang Diu shivered. Oh, almost all the people you like are dead, right? Mo Fian glanced at him. Do you want me to like you too? Yang Diu, Sun Mu said to his men beside him lightly, go back to the dragon boat and spread the news that Han Fei got divine weapons, extraordinary spiritual fruits, and dozens of heaven-level combat skills in the seaborne grassland, huh? Sun Mu looked indifferent. Just go and spread the news. Yang Diu muttered, You're so naughty. Mo Fian sighed slightly. Unfortunately, the memory about that day has been lost. Otherwise, we can at least roughly guess what happened there in the end, right? Why did only the three of us come out? Sun Mu curled his lips and said, I'm afraid that we came out alive because he didn't dare to kill us, fearing that the elders of our family would take action. With that, Sun Mu turned around. Let's stop chasing him. Yang Diu was taken aback. Let's stop chasing him? We don't want the sea token anymore? Sun Mu shook his head. This person has just gotten an opportunity and killed so many people. I'm afraid he is in a particularly peak state. If we go now, I'm afraid it will be extremely difficult to kill him. Instead, we'll get more people killed. Mo Fian smiled sweetly. Then let's wait and go to the steps into the sea. I believe that since people like him dare to go to the seaborne grassland, they will never miss the steps into the sea. Chapter 382. 5,000 kilometers away. Han Fei was lying on the deck of the wind god boat facing the sky, casting a divine healing light on himself. Then, he threw a bottle of pills into his mouth like jelly beans from time to time. These were the healing pills he found in Sun Mu's sea-swallowing seashells. They were quite effective, but they were colorful like rainbow candies. During this period, fishing boats occasionally passed by, but none of them stopped. Some people didn't know that Han Fei was here, but they didn't dare to approach him just by looking at the wind god boat. In their eyes, this boat was so beautiful that it didn't look like a boat at all. It was definitely not something that ordinary people could own. Who knew which big shot was resting here? About 6 hours later, the cracks on Han Fei's body disappeared, and the bones in his body were reconnected. At this moment, Han Fei had really reached the peak of his combat power. The upper limit of 5,001 points of spiritual energy. In this case, my physical limit has been raised again. It seems that I have to stay as an intermediate dangling fisher for a while. A level 5, low-quality spiritual heritage. Can I be considered a heavenly talent? Han Fei thought about it and didn't think so. Tang Go had a level 7 spiritual heritage at the beginning and was taken to the 1,000-star city. At this moment, he should be very powerful. However, since there were many people from the 1,000-star city in the level 3 fishery, would Tango come? Han Fei wondered if he should continue to upgrade his spiritual heritage or stabilize his realm after he recovered. While Han Fei was enjoying the sea breeze lazily, the huge sun had already set in the sky. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the sea surface. It was a magnificent sight. Crack, after taking the last healing pill, Han Fei was about to sit up from the deck to see if the demon purification pot could fuse a third contractual spiritual beast. Suddenly, a very creepy and gloomy laughter came from the sky and the earth. Hee hee hee. Hee hee hee. Han Fei suddenly got up and looked around. He felt that the sound didn't seem to be very far from him. Evil laughter? Evil shield? Ghost ship? Han Fei took a deep breath and immediately controlled the wind god boat to rush in the direction of the sound. He had too many sea-swallowing seashells. So far, he had accumulated as many as 6 sea-swallowing seashells. All the valuable things inside were taken out by him. Of course, there were even more things that he didn't like. But just because he didn't like it didn't mean others didn't like it. For example, Han Fei was not interested in any weapons below spiritual weapons, which were a burden to him. It couldn't hurt anyone in the level 3 fishery, so what was the use of it? Besides, if he sold all his sea-swallowing seashells, he would make a fortune. The sea-swallowing seashell itself was already very valuable. Of course, the price in the level 3 fishery might not be so high, but it was not cheap either. The wind god boat rushed all the way, and in less than 1,000 kilometers, Han Fei saw a huge black ship. Its size and height were almost the same as the dragon boat. Looking up, Han Fei felt that his wind god boat was as insignificant as an ant, no matter how gorgeous it was. However, this big black ship was not really black. Its main style was shabby, very shabby. Han Fei saw that the hull of the ship was covered with all kinds of shellfish, snails, barnacles, seaweed, bluestones. Even a lot of squid, octopus, and crabs were falling from the hull into the sea. Han Fei also saw that the hull was full of bumps and hollows. Some places had been simply repaired, and some places didn't even bother to be repaired at all. It felt like a broken jar that had been broken. However, like the dragon boats, the ghost ship was also engraved with arrays one after another. However, when Han Fei studied it carefully, the structure of the arrays was completely different from that of the dragon boat. The body of the dragon boats was covered with spirit absorption arrays. But what was engraved on the ghost ship seemed to be F***king killing arrays. Han Fei was speechless. The hull of the ghost ship was full of holes. How could this thing float on the sea? Could it even dive and be used as a submarine? Besides, with so many killing arrays, what kind of war was it preparing for? After Han Fei controlled the wind god boat to fly up, he saw the whole picture of the ghost ship more intuitively. Unlike the dragon boats, there was no one on the outer deck at all. The wooden floors in many places were broken, and some black clothes could be seen everywhere. Some were casually discarded on the ground, and some were hung randomly on the outer wall of the ship. On the outer wall of the cabin, there were also countless pure white masks hanging, with only 2 holes for the eyes and nothing else. This meant that you couldn't eat on the ghost ship. Because you couldn't even open your mouth, how could you eat? What was different from the dragon boat was that there were no windows here, only doors. Every few kilometers, there was a door, which seemed to lead to the inside of the cabin through the door. The ghost ship was not as high as the dragon boats, and there were only 3 floors above the deck. At the top, there were some flags that looked like sails. Han Fei guessed that this ship usually didn't sail on the sea, so the flags couldn't be sails. If they were in the ocean, they might be related to the ocean current. F***ck. A standard ghost ship, a standard pirate ghost ship. Han Fei was quite shocked. He wondered if the people inside were wearing pirate hat. Monsters with one eye, hooked hands, and octopus feet? Anyway, the captain of the ghost ship always had eclectic preferences. Han Fei didn't stay long because he saw black spots appearing in the sky in the distance, which seemed to be other people who were about to board the ghost ship. Approaching the ghost ship, Han Fei put away the fishing boat and jumped onto the deck. As a result, the dangling fisher almost slipped and fell. What the F***ck was this floor? The floor was full of all kinds of snails. Han Fei also saw crabs running across not far away, and octopus tentacles drilled into a broken wooden floor. What the hell is this? Han Fei picked up a black robe and was quite surprised as soon as he touched it. The material of this robe turned out to be some kind of black sand, which was quite heavy. As he moved his hands slightly, the water stains on the robe were immediately separated. The robe was as dry as if it had just been dried in the sun, and Han Fei put it on. Then he took a faceless mask from the outer wall of the cabin and put it on his face. Han Fei couldn't help but complain, "This design is too shitty. The mask of a faceless man should at least leave a hole for the mouth. Can't you just leave a small hole instead of a big one?" After Han Fei cleaned up, he kicked away a jumping fish under his feet, and then walked to the broken door that looked like it was made of several boards. However, when Han Fei stood at the door, he couldn't help but be taken aback. Although the door looked broken from the outside, there seemed to be another layer inside, and there was no so-called gap. Just when Han Fei wanted to push the door and go in, he found that there was no door handle. How could he get in? Han Fei tried to push the door, but the wooden door still didn't shake at all even though he exerted 1,000 kilograms of force. On the contrary, it made the door creak as if it was going to break at any moment. Knock, knock, knock. Is anyone there? Creak. As Han Fei knocked on the door was opened from the inside. It was also a faceless man who greeted Han Fei. Han Fei stepped into the door, and then a low male voice came from under the faceless man's mask. "How many days?" Han Fei thought for a moment. He wouldn't stay here for long, and he would probably sell out the things. Then, he would see if there was anything he needed, and then he could leave, so he responded, "1 day. 1,000 mid-quality pearls, or something of equal value." Han Fei casually threw 1,000 mid-quality pearls into a box behind the man. The latter took out a stone plate shining with a faint light, on which the number 119 was engraved. There was no telling if it was given according to the number of people on this ghost ship. The faceless man said in a low voice, "If you don't want to leave, come to any door an hour in advance and pay the money, and you can continue to stay. Otherwise, you will be forcibly expelled." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Is there anyone guiding you?" The faceless man didn't speak but just opened another door behind him, as if saying, "Go in and see for yourself." Inside the ghost ship, compared with the noise on the dragon boat, it was exceptionally quiet. Although Han Fei heard some people talking, it was just like ordinary people talking to each other, and there were not many of them and no transactions were involved. Han Fei stepped behind the door and couldn't help but be a little speechless. There were people here, but only in 2s and 3s. About every 10s or 100s of meters, there were some people standing, sitting, setting up stalls, or talking. Han Fei didn't see any so-called shops here at all, but the center of the ship seemed to be hollowed out. Han Fei could still hear the sound of the waves. It seemed that the middle of the hull was directly connected to the sea. And above his head, although there were still 3 floors above, water drops were still dripping from his head from time to time. In short, the ghost ship was damp, gloomy, and gloomy. The moment Han Fei entered the door, some people within 100 meters nearby all stared at him. The person closest to Han Fei was only 5 or 6 meters away. At this moment, he was leaning against the wood of the cabin with his arms crossed, looking at him. "Hey! Is this your first time here?" Han Fei glanced at him. "How do you know?" Chapter 383. The man sounded relaxed. Han Fei could even sense the faint smile behind his mask. "The first thing you did after you came in was to observe, and you seemed quite surprised and puzzled by the situation inside the Spectre. So, what's your purpose in boarding the Spectre?" Han Fei smiled casually. "Selling things and buying things. That's all." The man looked around. "These people are all selling things. What are you selling? Do you have any good stuff?" Han Fei hesitated for a moment but still replied, "I'm selling sea-swallowing seashells and some miscellaneous items." It seems that you've killed a lot of people to come to the Spectre to sell your sea-swallowing seashells. However, it's indeed convenient to make a move here. What about your sea-swallowing seashells? Do you have any authentic goods? Like a high-grade spirit weapon, or something?" Han Fei's lips twitched. Damn high-quality spiritual weapons. How many people in the level 3 fishery had high-quality spiritual weapons? That person laughed and said, "It's fine. If you don't have it, then forget it." Actually, in this place, it was more about bartering. Mid-quality pearls were useless, and it was troublesome to change hands. "If you don't mind, can I show you around?" Han Fei asked. "What's the fee?" "Fee?" The man smiled disdainfully. "Do you think this is a dragon boat?" "I'm just making friends." Han Fei didn't move but said casually, "You must be joking. Everyone is wearing a mask and you want to make friends with me? Are you kidding me?" The man slightly shook his head. "Okay. A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush. Do you have any high-grade spiritual weapons, top-grade materials, or combat skills or cultivation methods above the demon level? If you do, I'll take them. Of course, you can also sell them to the Spectre, but the price will be reduced by 50%. We'll only charge a 20% commission fee for our transaction." Han Fei was slightly stunned and quite surprised. He just walked in through a random door and met a random person. How could he be so rich? A weapon of this level was definitely a high-grade item. An ultra-quality magic weapon was worth about 50,000 mid-quality pearls. How much was a high-quality spiritual weapon worth? Han Fei asked. "There are so many people on the boat. Why do I have to pay a commission fee if I make a private transaction?" The man shrugged. "You can try not to pay. Maybe you can get away with it. However, as long as they were discovered, they would definitely die. And in this Spectre ship, you don't even know where there are spies. Of course, you don't have to worry about this. We can split the processing fee as long as you have something good." Han Fei tilted his head and looked at the man. "More importantly, what do you offer in exchange?" The man narrowed his eyes and said, "Demon-level combat skills, cultivation techniques. Whatever you want, I have it all." Han Fei turned around and left muttering, "Psycho." The person behind him was startled and quickly chased after him. "Hey, don't go. Isn't this enough?" Han Fei complained. "I hate those who pretend to be cool and brag the most. If you had these, you would have exchanged them here. If you had everything you need, would you still be in this godforsaken place?" The faceless man paused and did not continue to chase. Instead, he seemed to be deep in thought. "Did I blow too much? Forget it, wait for the next one." Gloomily, Han Fei walked in the huge, gloomy ghost ship. From time to time, someone offered to trade with him. For example, at this moment, a faceless man was sitting on the ground at the center of the cabin and asked in a hoarse voice, "Young man, do you want to trade something?" Han Fei asked, "How do you know that I am a young man?" The man smiled casually. "From the way you walk, the strength of your footsteps, and your hands." Han Fei stopped and shrugged, looking at him. "What do you have?" The man replied casually, "What do you want?" Han Fei thought for a moment. "I don't know. Let's see what you can give me." The man thought for a moment and took out a green fruit. "This is the venomous tulip of the seaborne prairie. It can protect you from all poisons here." Han Fei's eyes constricted. What a big shot. He knew about the venomous tulip. He just didn't know that there was such a thing in the seaborne prairie. According to the Encyclopedia of Spiritual Plants, the venomous tulip was an antidote fruit that grew in thousands of poisonous vines. Although it had no special effects, it was definitely a top-level spiritual fruit in terms of detoxification. Once it was taken, it would be invulnerable in the level 3 fishery. Han Fei found it hard to believe that a random person had such a precious thing. Han Fei asked, "How much is it?" The man snorted. "A high-quality spiritual saber, 100 kilograms of spiritual spring, and 500,000 mid-quality spiritual pearls." Han Fei stepped back and was lost for words. "Do I look like such a rich man to you?" Unexpectedly, the man said casually, "Your saber is magnificent. I'm afraid that your weapon is more than a high-quality spiritual saber. People like you usually don't lack the other two things." Han Fei sneered. The venomous tulip is good, but it's too expensive. Sorry, you can wait for the next person. Han Fei refused the deal. Even if he wanted to rip someone off, he shouldn't have done it this way. However, the deal proposed by the man made Han Fei suddenly realize a problem. When he bought spiritual fruits on the dragon boat, most of them were full of spiritual energy. There was only one antidote, and it didn't work very well. But there were thousands of spiritual fruits in the sea. He never expected that the special poisonous fruits would be so expensive. Han Fei ignored other people's requests on his way to a place where people were gathered. Han Fei saw that there were hundreds of people gathered there, and faceless people were everywhere. Come to think of it, the transactions there should be much more reliable than those outside. However, when Han Fei approached, he found that there was a trading center there. Yes, it was a trading center. It occupied a large area, but the sign of the trading center was very common and could be easily overlooked. Outside the trading center, it became noisy. Someone shouted, "Anything can be exchanged for mid-quality pearls. It's 10% cheaper than the trading center." Someone shouted, "Buying low-quality spiritual weapons in bulk." Someone even raised a high-quality spiritual sword. Only for demon-level high-quality saber techniques. Han Fei was stunned. Why were so many people hawking outside the trading center? Han Fei pulled a random person and asked, "The trading center is right in front of you. Why do you want to trade outside? Go away." His response was a dissatisfied scolding. This person didn't seem to want to answer Han Fei's question at all. Han Fei frowned, squeezed through the crowd, and entered the trading center. Han Fei was slightly stunned. The scene inside was a bit like a restaurant or a bar. There were tables and chairs, but no drinks or food were provided. Many people were sitting on tables and chairs and seemed to be talking about various prices. On one of the walls there were countless signs, each of which had a lot of information. For example, mid-quality spiritual whip, price 500,000 mid-quality pearls. Blood vine fruit, directional exchange for demon-level low-quality combat skills. Crystal mystic stone, directional exchange for mid-quality spiritual saber. High-quality spiritual saber, directional exchange for demon-level high-quality armor and combat skills. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. This was really a trading center. It was like a F*King intermediary, with all the treasures listed on it for people to choose freely. This wall was 100 meters wide and 20 meters high, with countless trading information written on it. Han Fei calculated and found that it was obviously not enough. It meant that there were many such trading centers on the ghost ship. Not far away there were several trading counters, where as many as 30 faceless people stood behind the counters, and people went to trade from time to time. On the other hand, the people going to the other counter were all in pairs. Then, the things they paid were basically mid-quality pearls. Therefore, Han Fei knew that the counter over there should be for people to trade privately and then pay 20% tax at the counter. Han Fei shook his head slightly. It wasn't that he didn't want to take out all his sea-swallowing seashells for personal exchange, but he really had too many sea-swallowing seashells. Besides, there were a lot of messy things in his sea-swallowing seashells. It was very troublesome to trade with people. But the ghost ship itself, even if the price was 50% lower, didn't they say that they wouldn't ask or care about anything? Han Fei saw that high-quality spiritual weapons were being sold here casually. If he sold his sea-swallowing seashells, he wouldn't be coveted by the owner of the dragon boat, right? Thinking for a while, Han Fei walked to the counter. "I want to sell something. Do you accept it here?" The trader behind the counter nodded slightly and then immediately said, "Yes, I accept any item, but the price is only 50% of the original price." Han Fei nodded. "I need someone to count them." The faceless man who was responsible for receiving Han Fei made a gesture of invitation, pointing at the tables in the hall. Han Fei was surprised. "Right here." However, the faceless man said, "Right here. It doesn't matter." Frowning, Han Fei followed her and then followed her. When he sat down on the chair, an invisible barrier rose around him, and all the sounds from the outside world disappeared. The faceless man opposite him said, "This place is soundproof. Now you can tell me what you want." Chapter 384. Han Fei felt that this deal was a bit absurd. Wasn't it too casual? What if he took out something as valuable as the big red trunk to trade? Wouldn't everyone be able to see it? As if knowing what Han Fei was wondering, the faceless man opposite Han Fei said, "Don't worry. So what if they see it? Here, no one knows who you are. If you are afraid of being targeted, we can provide a backdoor service. You can walk out of the exclusive darkroom for only 1,000 mid-quality pearls. Then no one will know which faceless man is you." Han Fei was slightly taken aback. This has to be based on the premise that the specter is absolutely fair, right? The faceless man opposite him nodded. Those who can come to the specter do so because they have absolute trust in us. In the level 3 fishery, something may happen to the dragon boat, but in the specter, nothing will happen. Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief, took out a sea-swallowing seashell, and said, "Sea-swallowing seashell, how much is it worth?" The faceless man opposite him was slightly taken aback. Just one sea-swallowing seashell? The minimum transaction price for those who come to the negotiating table must be no less than 500,000 mid-quality pearls. One sea-swallowing seashell may not be enough. Although this man said so, he had already picked up Han Fei's sea-swallowing seashell in his hand. His right hand was still calculating, and after about 10 minutes, he gently put down the sea-swallowing seashell and then said lightly, "There are many worthless things in it. This sea-swallowing seashell is worth 200,000 mid-quality pearls. If you sell it to us, it will be worth 100,000 mid-quality pearls. Do you have more?" Han Fei glanced around. He didn't think these people would care about sea-swallowing seashell. In fact, the people who could appear on the specter to trade didn't seem to be ordinary people. All of them seemed to have rare treasures. Han Fei grabbed another 5 or 6 sea-swallowing seashell and said, "Let's calculate again." An hour later, the faceless man opposite Han Fei was speechless. "How many sea-swallowing seashell has it been?" He had already calculated 0. Although the things in each sea-swallowing seashell were not particularly powerful. However, the level of the sea-swallowing seashell that Han Fei offered seemed to be getting higher and higher. In the end, the sea-swallowing seashells he gave out were all top-level materials, even ultra-quality ones. When the faceless man put down the third sea-swallowing seashell, he took a deep look at Han Fei. Now, the total price has reached 12 million mid-quality pearls. That's 20.06 million mid-quality pearls. Han Fei slightly grinned. That's so damn profitable. However, Han Fei knew that it would be best to sell the sea-swallowing seashells to the specter. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't be able to sell it at all, because no one lacked it. The people who came here were all here to try their luck and buy good things. Who would want to look at some trash? Han Fei nodded with a smile. Yes. At the same time, I'd like to ask if there are any spells that can change one's appearance? The faceless man on the other side thought for a moment. Yes, but it's only at the spirit level. It's worth 8 million. Han Fei almost slapped him. I sold more than 80 sea-swallowing seashells for only 20 million. You want to sell a spirit-level spell book for 1 million? The faceless one said, "There are too many dangerous people on the Spectre ship. As long as the Spectre ship goes out to sea, there will be dozens or even hundreds of people asking about the spell that can change one's appearance. What I recommend to you is the best disguise technique that I know of." Han Fei was speechless. The best is only at the spirit level? The man said, "There are many disguise spells, but most of them can only change the wriggling of the flesh and blood on the face or cover the face with illusions. It's just a bunch of low-level spells. The spell I recommend can move your muscles and bones, change your body temperament, and make you look like a completely different person. Han Fei shook his head. No, I want those cheap ones. Just find any cheap one and give it to me. Are you sure? Han Fei nodded. I'm very sure. Han Fei thought to himself, I worked so hard to earn money. How can I let you take it back so easily? As for the quality of the spell, well, I have plenty of spiritual energy now. I just need to deduce it a few more times. Do you think I can't deduce it? Sure enough, the faceless man nodded. Okay, any level is fine? Han Fei nodded. Anything is fine. After this series of transactions, the faceless man made a gesture, and someone immediately came over. The two faceless men talked for a while, and soon, in less than 5 minutes, the item was delivered. After the transaction, Han Fei felt refreshed, and the garbage on his body was finally cleaned up. In the end, he got a mystic level, mid-quality spell called camouflage. However, Han Fei was quite surprised by the price. A mystic level, mid-quality spell was sold for 1,000,000 mid-quality pearls. Han Fei thought that a spell of this level might have been randomly picked up from a garbage dump. However, even so, Han Fei still got 19.06 million mid-quality pearls. Plus the mid-quality pearls from the sea-swallowing seashells. He had now become a millionaire with a net worth of 25.6 million. Damn it. If I want to make money, I have to come to the level 3 fishery. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. When he was on the dragon boat, he only sold hundreds of thousands of mid-quality pearls, and he was targeted. Look at the specter, rich and overbearing. Any staff member could make a transaction worth tens of millions of yuan. In contrast, the dragon boat was simply garbage in Han Fei's eyes at this moment. Of course, Han Fei couldn't help but wonder what kind of person the owner behind the specter was. Since such a person could withstand the pressure from the dragon boat, why did he need to make money in a place like the level 3 fishery? Since he couldn't figure it out, Han Fei simply stopped thinking about it. It could be said that his purpose of boarding the specter this time had been achieved. However, since he had a huge sum of money, he naturally had to go shopping and see what was sold here. He might not care about other things for the time being, but he had to prepare at least hundreds of flash stones. Although there were already 70 or 80 flash stones in his sea-swallowing seashell. But he didn't mind having too many things to escape with. If he encountered a place like the Seaweed City wall, the flash stones would come in handy. On the wall, Han Fei looked at the shelves one by one, including the spiritual weapon section. Although he already had a suitable spiritual weapon, this didn't prevent him from looking around. What if he met a suitable spiritual weapon? Unfortunately, after looking around, Han Fei didn't find any spiritual weapon that was suitable for him. However, he saw a large number of spiritual fruits hanging on the shelves, and the number was very large, as many as 500. Among them, according to the function standard of spiritual fruits, there were breakthrough spiritual fruits, that is, spiritual fruits containing high spiritual energy. There were also detoxification fruits, which could strengthen the body and increase spiritual power. Han Fei was quite surprised. When he was on the dragon boat, after eating more than 30 spiritual fruits, he only felt that the practical significance of spiritual fruits was not as great as he imagined. But even if the effect of spiritual fruits was not that great, they were still spiritual fruits. If he ate too much, it would also cause the spiritual energy and other aspects of the body to be enhanced. Here, most spiritual fruits could be bought with mid-quality pearls, and only a few rare spiritual fruits would be exchanged for equivalent value. In front of this wall, although there was no counter, there were a few faceless people standing against the wall. Whenever someone wanted to make an exchange, they would communicate with these people. Han Fei also found one at this moment. He simply stepped forward and said, "I want to buy spiritual fruits. I'll take all of them." All of them? Han Fei nodded. The spiritual fruits here were each priced around 1,500 mid-quality pearls, and the slightly better ones were up to 5,000 at most. There were only 3 that were priced as high as 10,000 mid-quality pearls. One was called Magic Barrier Fruit, priced at 50,000 mid-quality pearls, which was not expensive. After taking this spiritual fruit, the user would have the ability to resist illusions. As for the effect, Han Fei didn't know. One was called Poison Gathering Grass, priced at 10,000 mid-quality pearls. To be precise, it was not a spiritual fruit but an edible marine herb. If someone was poisoned later, they could take it and forcibly gather poison. Then, if they were strong enough, they could expel the poison out of their body. It was a disposable spiritual herb. Another was called Heavenly Spirit Jujube, priced as high as 500,000 mid-quality pearls. It was the most expensive of all the spiritual fruit. Because this spiritual fruit was extremely rare, it was said that it could permanently improve the spiritual power of the user, but Han Fei didn't know exactly how much. But in any case, Han Fei was happy to spend money on something that could improve his spiritual power with money. However, when Han Fei was about to pay, he found that the information of the Heavenly Spirit Jujube had been erased. Han Fei immediately said, "Hey, I'll buy that Heavenly Spirit Jujube. Why is it gone?" The faceless person said, "Someone was faster than you." Something like this that could permanently increase one's mental strength was extremely rare. Usually, they're gone in no more than 100 seconds. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Who was competing with him? However, Han Fei still said in a hurry, "Then hurry up. I'll take all of them." Chapter 385. The trading hall suddenly fell silent because everyone found that all the spiritual fruits on the trading wall had disappeared. It wasn't like no one had done this before. But at most, there were only dozens or hundreds of spiritual fruits on the trading wall. But this time, all the spiritual fruits disappeared, which was the first time. Someone was speechless. Which idiot? Why did he buy all the spiritual fruits at once? A faceless man rolled his eyes. Even if you're rich, you can't do this. When Han Fei paid, everyone turned to look at him, wondering if they should rob him or not. Han Fei didn't care about other people's attention. What do you know? There are so many spiritual fruits here. I can't miss it no matter what. Of course, Han Fei was the only one here who thought so. After all, no one could eat spiritual fruits as if they were jelly beans like he did without causing the spiritual energy to dissipate. Han Fei smacked his lips. More than 500 spiritual fruits cost him nearly 3 million mid-quality pearls. This price was quite expensive. An ordinary spiritual fruit on the dragon boat was only about 800, but the price here was more than double. But Han Fei was willing to buy it on the dragon boat. If he left the boat, wouldn't he be chased by countless people? Han Fei accepted the spiritual fruits and looked at the staff. How many trading halls are there on the boat? The staff was stunned for a moment. Do you think it's not enough? Do you still want to buy more? However, since the customer wanted it, he was happy to explain. He immediately replied, "There are a total of 12 trading halls. You can walk around them and you'll eventually finish them." Han Fei nodded. "What about the upper 2 floors? Where are those?" The staff didn't hide it. There is only 1 floor above. The top floor is not open to the public. What is the upper floor for? The staff explained, "It's the place of intelligence. There, you can buy all the intelligence you want to know. Of course, it may not be complete, but it's definitely more complete than the dragon boat." Han Fei nodded slightly, a little surprised. Does the Spectre also do intelligence? However, it only has 1 ship. How can it do intelligence? Even if the Spectre can send spies to each dragon boat, how can it gather all the intelligence together? After all, when it came to intelligence, it was all about timeliness. After a certain time, intelligence would be meaningless. In any case, Han Fei decided to visit the other 11 trading halls first. However, as soon as he walked out of the trading hall, he stopped. According to the number of spirit fruits in this trading hall, he might not be able to buy all 11 of them. At most, he would only be able to buy 6 or 7 of them before his wallet would be empty. Han Fei was lost for words. The ghost ship was indeed more expensive than the dragon boat. I have more than 20 million in my hands, but it's not even enough for a tour of the ship. Calculating the number of mid-quality pearls he had, it took him 6 hours to visit the other 11 trading halls. However, this time, he did not buy all of them. Basically, he picked out half of them and bought them. Even so, after visiting 11 trading halls, Han Fei only had 100,000 mid-quality pearls left. He couldn't help but be speechless. Buying things was really burning money. Of course, the result was completely out of everyone's expectations. After a round of shopping, the number of spiritual fruits on him had reached more than 4,600. During the 6 hours, the trading halls went crazy. Everybody knew that a rich man had come to the Spectre and was buying spiritual fruit. Those who came earlier and those who came later all stuffed their spiritual fruits into the trading halls, hoping that Han Fei would buy all the spiritual fruits at once. Unfortunately, when the spiritual fruits in the trading halls were full again, Han Fei stopped buying. Immediately, many people were infuriated. Because Han Fei did not deliberately hide his traces, many people simply came up to him and shouted, "Why did you stop buying spiritual fruits?" Han Fei was lost for words. "What does it have to do with you whether I buy spiritual fruits or not?" Someone trembled in fury under the mask. "Does this asshole not know that there's a fee for putting spiritual fruits in the trading halls?" Someone threatened, "Brat, you'd better not let me know who you are. Otherwise, I won't spare you." Han Fei blinked his eyes and scratched the mask on his face with his fingers. Then he tilted his head and looked at those people. "Fortunately, you don't know who I am. Everyone." At this moment, the person who offered to sell Han Fei the venomous tulip walked up and spoke to Han Fei telepathically. "Venomous tulip, do you still want it?" Surprised, Han Fei replied, "You recognized me?" The man chuckled hoarsely. "You have an awe-inspiring knife intent. It's hard for me not to recognize you. If you don't remove the saber intent on your body, many of these people will recognize you." Han Fei slightly narrowed his eyes. "To be honest, your venomous tulip is the best one in the 12 trading halls. However, I don't have the money to buy your venomous tulip now. You know that I've bought a lot of goods," the man said telepathically, "a high-quality spiritual saber, 100 kilograms of spiritual spring, and 200,000 mid-quality spiritual pearls." Han Fei was lost for words. "Although I like your spiritual fruit, you've only asked for 300,000 mid-quality spiritual pearls less. Is the price any different from before?" The faceless man was lost for words. "I've already lowered the price by 300,000 mid-quality pearls, and you call it the price no different from before?" Seeing that the man was silent, Han Fei said telepathically, "You refused to trade inside because you knew that the venomous tulip couldn't be sold at such a high price. I admit that the venomous tulip is good, but ordinary people don't know it at all. Even if they do, they won't know if the venomous tulip is as valuable as it's rumored to be until they take it. To put your venomous tulip in the trading hall, other people will offer a mid-quality spiritual weapon and 1,000,000 mid-quality pearls at most. It's hard to say whether they will give you the spiritual spring or not." Han Fei was not panicked at all. While talking, he immediately walked to the entrance of the second floor. "Wait a minute. A high-quality spiritual saber and 100 kilograms of spiritual spring." Han Fei shook his head. "I have a high-quality spiritual saber, but only 50 kilograms of spiritual spring. If you sell it, we'll trade. If you don't, forget it. I have a lot of spiritual fruits anyway." The faceless man said angrily, "None of them is as good as the venomous tulip." Han Fei smiled. "But I have a lot of them." The man was speechless. He had nothing to say. This guy had bought all 12 trading halls. It seemed that he didn't need any venomous tulip at all. The man gritted his teeth and said, "Deal. We'll split the commission." A moment later, Han Fei really became a pauper after he came out of the trading hall. The deal was definitely not small. He underestimated the value of a high-quality spiritual weapon in the level 3 fishery. It was true that his saber was robbed from the armorist who tried to kill him a few days ago. However, the spiritual spring and mid-quality pearls were both his. Just 10% of the commission cost nearly 500,000 mid-quality pearls, which made his heart ache. However, the faceless man probably felt the same. He asked for 1,000,000 mid-quality pearls not because he wanted money, but because he wanted the buyer to cover the commission. Of course, Han Fei didn't regret it. Although the venomous tulip and the spiritual spring were only worth 5,000,000 mid-quality pearls, it was actually far more than that. In fact, many people knew the value of the venomous tulip, but it was useless if they couldn't afford it. Or rather, those who could afford it were unwilling to pay such a high price for a chance. Han Fei was so extravagant because he felt that it was too easy to make money in the level 3 fishery. At least in the eyes of others, Han Fei was a spendthrift. Next to every trading hall on the Spectre, there was a staircase not far away, which was convenient to go to the second floor. When Han Fei walked up to the second floor, he found that the scene on this floor was quite similar to the first floor, except that the trading hall had been replaced by an intelligence hall. Han Fei didn't know if there were 12 intelligence offices in this place too. He didn't intend to stroll around but went straight to the nearest intelligence hall. However, when he was about to enter the door, 2 faceless men blocked his way. To enter the intelligence hall, you need to pay 100,000 mid-quality pearls or something of equal value. Han Fei didn't know what to say. Wherever he went, he had to pay. The way the Spectre made money was much more ruthless than the dragon boat. Having no choice, Han Fei could only take out another 100,000 mid-quality pearls. He pondered that if he wanted to buy information at this rate, he might not even have enough money on him. However, when Han Fei paid the money, the faceless man handed him a fish skin map and said, "This is part of the past intelligence, free of charge." Han Fei was surprised. So good. This was definitely the first F*King benefit he got on the Spectre. Past intelligence was still intelligence. It would be a waste if he didn't take it. Entering the intelligence hall, Han Fei looked around and found one private room after another. At the door of each private room, a faceless man stood. Han Fei randomly picked one and asked, "How much is the intelligence? Please come in."